United States is born from the fact that the US president, Mr. Trump, believes that America is being ripped off in a trading arrangement over the last 20, 30, 40 years, where he believes that it's export heavy, in countries like Philippines, China, Vietnam, etc., which are ripping off America because there is a trade differential there. It includes India as well. He believes that that trade needs to be much more balanced. Now, that is his view. The point is, what is India doing to try and convince him that it is in the interests of American consumers, in the interests of American businesses, in the interests of American, people who are going to the shops and to the department stores, who are buying for, let's say, Thanksgiving, who are buying for Christmas, that cheap Indian exports into the United States are good for American consumers. I don't think India has been able to convince him about that. Number two,
Right.
in the course of this last few weeks, he's also managed to make some concessions for American allies, like Japan is being tariffed at 15%. The European Union is being tariffed at 15%. I have a feeling that South Korea, too, in the next few days and weeks,
Right.
will get tariffed at 15%. So why is India then being tariffed at a 10% differential? We still don't know how much American imports from China are going to be tariffed at. That's been postponed by 3 months. If Chinese imports are being tariffed at 20% and Indian imports are being tariffed at 25%, that pretty much renders Indian imports incompetitive, and that's a
Right.
problem.
Zaka, just stay with me. I want to go across to my colleague Pallavi also, who's getting the first few responses that are coming in from the Indian government. Of course, they're going to read the fine print, Pallavi, but this must be a shock because just yesterday, Donald Trump indicated things could be different if a deal is worked out, and India was hopeful that the deal would be inked in the next few months. So something has happened in between. But how is the Indian government looking at this as we speak?
Shivani, even as we speak, I'm right at the corridor where the office of the Commerce Minister is there, and I can tell you there is a meeting going on in the Commerce Minister's chamber at this point of time. The External Affairs Minister, Mr. S. Jaishankar, is also present in that meeting. In fact, the countdown to the end of the Operation Sindhu debate is also about to begin. Of course, there would be a little bit of worrying signs, but as of now, they don't seem to be too perturbed. The first response that we are getting by way of our top government sources is that we are going through the fine print of the trade tariff policy, which has been announced by the American president, and we are then going to take a final structured response, and we are basically sinking in, and then we are going to come out with a structured response on what really this trade tariff means. What is going to be important now to find out is that the sectors on which the trade tariff has been imposed. Has India's agro products been largely protected? Has our labor-intensive products like carpets, footwear, gems, jewelry, has that also been protected? Because that is exactly has been the crux of our negotiations as far as the trade talks between India and America is concerned. But the word which is very, very clear is, while we're looking at the fine print, the story is not over. There's no reason to be disheartened. This is a process of negotiation, renegotiations, and an American team is going to be flying down to Delhi, which was pre-scheduled. And we do expect that there would be one way open. But India has not negotiated on the benchmark of being under any kind of pressure coming in from any other countries. Very quickly, Shivani, there have been alternative plans which have been kept ready. One, of course, is looking up for newer markets, markets which have been equally hit by the trade tariffs. If we're looking at the Latin American countries, East Asian markets, that's one. Second, even the established European market, for example, the recent FTA signed with UK, that also gives us a huge vantage position. So India is not looking at backing down, but for now, the fine print is going to be studied, which is top government sources are saying, and then when they come out with a structured response.
Well, Trump is definitely doubling down as far as the justifications for this 25% tariff plus penalty is concerned, Zaka. He has made one more social media post in which he's gone on to say that we have a massive trade deficit with India, double exclamation points. In his previous social media post, he had said that India has one of the highest tariffs that America faces.
So, look, Trump has a very different view of how trade should be, how even trade, how normalized trade should be between America and its trading partners. He believes any country or any unit which has a trading surplus with the United States, that is, in his words, quote unquote, ripping off America. So, for example, India has about a $43 billion trade surplus with the United States. A large number of it is from leather, footwear, textile exports into the US, where cheap Indian labor is able to produce these mass manufactured products and then send it to America. The problem is Trump views that as a disadvantage fundamentally to America and to American industry. He doesn't view it so much so from the American consumer's point of view. Like, for example, in the next couple of months, there's going to be what is the biggest shopping season in the US, which is, the holiday season, Thanksgiving, and, Black Friday, as it were, and then Black Monday, and eventually into Christmas season. But at that point of time, whether it is Indian imports into America, Chinese imports into America, other imports from other Asian countries, those are all going to be tariffed at much higher levels. The general weighted average tariff of US imports before all of these Trump tariffs kicked in was 2.5%. That's going to go to at least a minimum of 15% for imports from the European Union, for imports from Japan, for imports from some of these partner nations, allied military allies of the United States. As far as other Southeast Asian countries are concerned, Vietnam is being charged at 20%, Indonesia at 19%, Philippines again at between 19 and 20%. India would be tariffed at much higher than any of these countries. Now, none of this would actually matter until we get to what the trading arrangement is going to be between America and China. Those are the two biggest trading blocs in the world, the two biggest trading nations in the world. And that has been pushed back by another 3 months. They had 2 days of talks in Stockholm, the Chinese and American negotiators, and they've decided, we haven't been able to come to a conclusion, so we're going to push back those talks by another 3 months, which means in that interim of 3 months, Indian goods are going to be charged at a much higher differential than imports from Europe or imports from Southeast Asia, imports from Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, etc., Japan, as compared to imports from India. And that is a critical concern for Indian exporters into the United States.
So he's also going on to say, the American President Donald Trump, that the August 1st deadline is the August 1st deadline. It stands strong and will not be extended. A big day for America. In his previous tweet, he also, of course, tweeted MAGA again. Are we waiting to hear for some other countries as well, which could be important in India's context? Or as you said, the Chinese tariffs are only going to be decided in a couple of months' time because the August 1 deadline, which applied to India, are there any more countries, Zaka, waiting to hear from America?
So the biggest trading partners, Japan, Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, European Union, these are the biggest trading partners of the United States if you leave aside China. China, they've announced after 2 days of talks in Stockholm that they're going to sort of extend that by another 3 months. So they've got 3 months to negotiate some kind of deal with China. This is pretty much 80-90% of the trade that America does. The point then is, what is the advantage that India has, if any, in trading with the United States? As of now, India doesn't seem to have an advantage. It is still possible that between now and end of September, end of November, when President Trump is expected to come to India to attend the Quad Summit, that India can arrive at some kind of a negotiated trade arrangement with the United States. But right now, starting August 1st, which is a couple of days from now, all Indian exports, gems and jewelry, pharmaceuticals, footwear, leather, all Indian exports to the United States will be charged at a minimum of 25%. So there's going to be a great deal of uncertainty, trade, market volatility that's going to happen over the next few months until hopefully Indian and American negotiators can arrive at a better trade deal than the 25% tariffs that he's hit on India right now.
Pallavi also continues to be with us. Pallavi, you have been tracking these negotiations as they have been on. And since, of course, Donald Trump adopted this posture that he has to tariff all other trading partners at the rate that they tariff America, what could be India's strategy in the interim, even as we try and work out an FTA?
Well, I mean, see, there have been always a two-pronged strategy, really, Shivani, which India has been working upon. I mean, to those who are going to say that this has come as a huge shocker and unexpected, I think there was a sense of apprehension within some quarter of our negotiators that given the mood and uncertainty coming in from Donald Trump, the figures may not be exactly as low as many in India had predicted. I mean, someone talked about 10 to 15%. 25% is a huge amount plus a 10%, which notches it up to around 35%. But what we are told, of course, the story is not over. But I just to go back to the point which you were making and asking me, Shivani, it's not that the government was not keeping a backup plan. Two things we were repeatedly told was that one, we are looking at newer markets. I mean, markets which are equally hit by the tariff policy of America and the smaller markets. We are going to start looking out at them. We have been reaching out to them. The Prime Minister's multiple diplomatic overtures and trips abroad were not without a reason. He's trying to look for newer markets, and that is exactly what we were working upon. I'm going to try and get you some more details, even as the meeting has just got over between the Commerce Minister and F. Shankar. That's the quick update I can give you because we're just going to the.
Okay. Even as Pallavi tries to get us more.
Looking for newer markets. We are looking for newer markets. And the second, of course, we're looking is that FTA, for example, with UK, that was a hard negotiation and a very powerful messaging with the Prime Minister himself being there and that deal being inked in the presence of the Prime Minister. So that's a message we are sending out to the world that don't think that India is going to stand alone on it. We do have options. We do have alternatives. But with America, we share a very good equation. And that's the reason we are hoping for a renegotiation.
All right. Vijay Sadana, economist, is also joining us. But before I go to him, Zaka, there are also these penalties that Donald Trump is talking about. Is this that 10% that he had mentioned for all countries earlier? Or is he talking about some penalties over and above for India because of that Russian oil trade?
No, so that is separate because that's a bill that's been brought forth by the Republicans in the US Congress that has to go through the motions of, it has to be passed by the US Congress. I think we're, a fair distance from that. So that's a separate one. Right now, what we understand is that as per what the tweet and the Truth Social post that's been put by the US president, that all Indian imports into the United States will be charged at 25%, which means that India and the US and negotiators have been having multiple rounds of talks over the last 3-4 months now. India was hoping to be one of the first countries to have some kind of interim trading arrangement with the United States. That has not come to pass. Because if we look at the tariffs that are being levied at US partners and allies like Japan at 15%, European Union at 15%, some of the most important countries for America are being charged at 15%, and Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines at between 19 and 20%. India's charge will be much higher than that, it will be 25%. And also, the critical unknown here is that China, with whom negotiations have been happening, multiple rounds have happened. The second round concluded in Stockholm. Those are being extended by another 3 months. So if the differential between Indian and Chinese imports into America are anywhere above, let's say, 5%, that makes Indian exports into the US much more at a, let's say, less competitive stage, at a disadvantageous position. So that is something we will know only in the next 3 months. But as of now, unless Indian negotiators and their American counterparts can arrive at some kind of a negotiated deal with America for somewhere between 15 and 20%, which is what Trump is offering the likes of Japan and EU and other countries, I think this is not something that India and Indian negotiators would particularly like, because it puts Indian exports at a bit of a disadvantage compared to their Asian peers.
All right, let me also go across to Vijay Sardana, economist, who's joining us. Your first thoughts, is this going to be a setback, if not, for too long or for long term, but at least in the interim for India?
See, this was expected. This is not something new. Because Trump was trying to bully around India. They wanted Indian policymakers to surrender as per his wish list, and that one has to understand. So this is a diplomatic game which is going on because there are many things. In China is giving tough time to US. That is why Trump wants Indian market very badly. Now, he knows that there is no alternate to China because China is a big buyer and supplier of US goods and services. Now, in order to compensate, if China is not playing with the tunes of Trump, and if some reason, like especially in agriculture products, if China is not accepting US terms, then where is the alternate market? So there is no other comparable market in the world like India, like China. That the only option is India. In this scenario, it is a desperate attempt by Trump administration to access Indian market. So all these things are pressure techniques. And they know that, unfortunately, problem with Indian export is we are only dealing in commodities. What they are buying from India, they can buy from anywhere else also. So Indian industry has to gear up. We have to become more innovative. We have to invest in R&D to access global markets. Otherwise, if we are only operating at commodities like cotton, like basic textiles, jewelries, fishery products, fruits and vegetables, these anybody can supply. There is nothing great here. So it is, we have to upgrade ourselves so that we can bargain better with US.
Could this be an opportunity of sorts? In fact, when these Trump trade business started, many industry experts had talked about how this might be the push that India needed to kind of diversify and also, of course, look at better quality exports and exports, diversify exports to other countries as well. Could this be an opportunity that really will now work out for India? But in the interim, there doesn't seem to be any ending of the Trump tariffs. As far as all countries are concerned, while Donald Trump continues to maintain that India is a great friend, he's been upset that India levies much higher tariffs than US does on Indian goods, and he wants to equalize that, as he has said, with all other countries. But it is curious that the US is also kind of using this opportunity to make India the villain as far as buying Russian oil and energy is concerned, despite the fact that India's trade with Russia and India then selling a lot of that oil and energy further on helped the global economy to stay afloat and not allow prices to rise much further. Vijay Sadana, when you talk about this being a wake-up call of sorts, do you think the industry in India is ready to kind of rise up to the occasion?
See, as an Indian society, we are reactive in nature. We are never proactive. Unless somebody pushes us or we go through crisis, only then we wake up. I think this is a good signal that Trump is giving to India that please wake up. Otherwise, you will not be there. Today, US is putting restriction. Tomorrow, Europe will put restriction. Then somebody else will do it. China is already creating problem for you. So what I'm saying is this is a good wake-up call for Indian industry and policymakers that the situation, the status quo will not give you any benefit. You invest in R&D, you focus on innovation like what China has done. Today, China can arm twist US. Classic example is, rare earth magnets. Classic examples are other precious materials, which is required by industrial goods. Now, why Trump is extending deadline again and again for China? For a simple reason, because China, if China switches off the tap of supplies, US industry will be in crisis. If the same thing happens with India, what will happen to US? Nothing. You will not supply textile. They will buy from Bangladesh. They will buy from Egypt. They will buy from Turkey and even China itself. So what I'm trying to say is that unless we have some competitive advantage in the world market today, assuming that just because Trump is friend and business will continue, these are not justifiable arguments. Trump is a businessman. His friends are businessmen. He has his own agenda. He is not interested in America. He is not interested in India. His voters are American. He has to think what Americans want. So he is clear. Are we clear? Are we putting our house in order, or we are still waiting for last 50 years old archive laws, which is frustrating growth in India? That is what we have to look at it.
No, absolutely. Many economists have talked about how India needs to look at this as an opportunity to make the changes that have been long time coming or have just been delayed because of the lethargy of the Indian system. Sunil Alag, market strategist and managing director of SK Advisors, is also with us. Sunil, do you believe this could well turn out to be an opportunity for us?
No, I am turning out that, look, Mr. Trump is one who strikes a deal on every occasion. So he will change every month. He said in the beginning, now he's got 4 years, in October, November he'll change. And therefore, we don't really have to worry about him saying 25% tariff on us. Because it can come down to 20% or it can go up depending on Trump's mood, really. Because he is changing every minute. Now we just signed with UK over 10 years, and therefore Europe is now willing to sign with us. And therefore I turn around and say that, look, if Trump is asking us for 25%, he's equating the two. He's equating the exports and the imports on us. And therefore, we have to now, as somebody said earlier, your economist said earlier, that look, it's a wake-up call for us against America. Now, it's US is a separate market, and Europe is a separate market, and UK is a separate market. We've just signed a deal with UK. We will go ahead and sign with Europe. And therefore, the whole world is going to go through a change now. And therefore, we have to now work on that.
Okay, just stay with me.
Because
Sunil
the
Alag.
US...
Yes, just stay with me. I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Sadana and Mr. Alag. Let me just, for the benefit of our viewers, also just point out what could be India's response. Of course, there have been contingency plans that have been made, given that the US-India deal was turning out to be a pretty prickly one to work out, and it is going to take some more time. So what India can do in the meantime is look to diversify export markets and boost trade with the likes of EU, Middle East, ASEAN countries, Africa, to reduce the US dependence. We can also seize US tariff gaps with other countries like Canada, China, Mexico, as it may help Indian exports in electricals, auto, pharma, and chemicals. We can continue, of course, to negotiate with US while cutting tariffs on US imports, push for $500 billion bilateral trade agreement by 2030. Meanwhile, internally, and this is where the focus will be, we can look to expand the schemes like the PLI schemes to grow domestic production in electronics, pharma, and textiles, some of those that might be affected. India might also allow the rupee to depreciate for some time to make its exports more competitive in the face of the US tariffs. Mr. Alag, Mr. Sadana was talking about how Donald Trump is a businessman, his friends are businessmen, his voters are the American voters. In fact, currently he's facing a lot of pressure, even from his MAGA constituency and base. His approval ratings are going down over the entire Epstein saga. And, this is a moment where he might double down on these tariffs issue because this works for him as far as his constituency is concerned. So while he's looking out at his domestic constituency, we need to figure out our way as well. We can't quite ignore America. We can't quite create an, non-America trade bloc, as you were suggesting. I'm not sure how possible that will be. Everybody has to deal with America. But we have to, of course, look at this more pragmatically.
Look, as far as I'm concerned, look, this is an opportunity for us because we have to look at UK, we have to look at EU. Now, that's the way it is going to be in the coming years. Look, India first, America is going to look at America first, and therefore UK and EU is going to look at themselves first. So each country is going to look after themselves, and therefore it's important that we also start looking over the next few years. This is not going to affect us badly right now. It's an opportunity for us to move ahead because as far as we are concerned, America is an important market today, but we don't rely on Americans as much as we used to earlier, except the dollar and the rupee rate is always still the dollar. And therefore, it is important for us to think about it. It's an opportunity for us because most of the markets have to study, most of us have to study this market and see where we stand because the next 1 year is going to be important for Trump as well as for us, as well as for China, as well as for UK, as well as for Europe. And therefore, Mr. Trump may move backwards or forwards depending on his entire thing. Look,
Mr. Alag, just stay with me. I want to go across to Lata Venkatesh, consulting editor, CNBC, also joining us with her insight. Lata, how is the Indian system, particularly the private sector, the business sector, expected to respond to this?
Well, this is going to be very difficult for those who are exposed hugely to the United States. We have to, first of all, recognize that we are not a large exporting country. And it is only exports to one country that has been impacted. So in terms of a macroeconomic GDP impact, it is not huge. But it will be very big for, say, a textile exporter, for a gems and jewelry exporter, for an auto ancillary exporter, for, engineering goods exporters. For very specific goods, it would be like, 50%, 40%, 30% of their entire earnings. So selectively, it hits. It doesn't hit the macro so much. We must remember that the biggest export to the United States is software services, and services are not part of this tariff problem. So to that extent, we are safe.
Okay. How do you expect how soon can we expect the Indian government to respond on this? Do you think they'll wait for a little bit before they can read the fine print? Although they would have been prepared for this eventuality, isn't it?
I would assume they would be. This is really a political question, and your other guests may be far better placed than I am. I'm sure back channels are working overtime already. This could well be just an arm-twisting tactic of President Trump to get entry into areas where India has hitherto shut the door. Actually, India is in a politically very difficult position when it comes to food grains. You know, we have a PDS system. We can't dismantle it for anything under the sun. We also have protection for rice, protection for wheat. So, you know, there are a lot of markets which we cannot change at all. Trump may choose to call it non-tariff barriers, but we cannot allow certain kinds of milk, animals fed on blood meat, as it is called. You know, we have a Hindu vegetarian community, we have a Jain vegetarian community, which is very particular about not consuming certain qualities, certain kinds of milk. And therefore, dairy, again, will be a no-no. The American position will be you actually protecting your dairy farmers. But this is a non-tariff barrier. There are all these issues which he's trying to arm twist us into giving in. Maybe because of the extreme position he has put us in, perhaps we will allow some kind of dairy product which is marked red or something, so that the consumer knows that, you know, this is that kind. This comes. Perhaps something like that will come. Maybe the back channels are already working. In fact, I'm sure they're working.
Right. Lata, before I let you go, what impact do you reckon the markets will see because of this?
I think the markets will take it very negatively initially. Tomorrow we are going to see textile stocks, you know, like a Gokaldas Exports or something fall. You will hear auto ancillary stocks like Bharat Forge take a hit. I don't know how pharmaceuticals will work, because pharmaceuticals is a carve out and they may not be injured immediately, but if it is also a part of the penalty, pharma companies will also take a hit.
Yes.
The steel and autos are different. Steel is coming under a separate 50%, and we are not terribly exposed to the United States by way of steel exports. So those may not be. But these pockets will be, and there will be an overall sense of disappointment. You already saw the rupee hit a 5-month low today. So probably some people saw it coming. We saw the dollar become as expensive as 87.48, 87.50 almost at a point in time. We could see more of that happening because of the fear that some of our exports are going to get impacted.
All right. Lata Venkatesh, thanks a lot for joining us. Of course, we'll continue to get you more from the Indian government for their first responses. But what we are learning via sources is that even though Trump has threatened that the tariffs and penalty will kick in starting August 1, US officials are set to visit India on August 25. So discussions will continue to hammer out an agreement at the earliest. The delay is also an indication that India is being a tough negotiator, since we are demanding preferential access to certain American markets, like in the case of Japan, which US officials claim have committed to investments in US with American taxpayers set to receive majority profit. US wants Indian investments that benefit Americans. According to US trade representatives, in 2024 alone, US goods trade with India amounted to $129.2 billion, comprising $41.8 billion in US exports and $87.4 billion in imports. Let me go across to my colleague Akansha, who's also joining us with more on this. Akansha, if there was ever a proof that India is not kind of bowing down to the kind of deal that may look preferential to US, I think this is that indication. But it does make the road ahead a little bit tougher when you have the sword of the tariffs hanging on you.
Absolutely, Shivani, and there's no bowing down over here to one of the biggest economies in the world, that is the United States. And to bear testimony to it is Donald Trump's own post on Truth Social, where he's talked about India's tough trade barriers. He's, of course, attacking India's protectionist policies, especially when it comes to dairy and our agro sector, which the Americans are really trying hard to break through. But you shared very crucial information that we have from our sources within the ministries, which have gone on to indicate that right now the communication between India and the United States is very much on. In fact, US officials are all set to be in India towards end of August. Reports are indicating, and what we are learning is that it could be August 25th. They will continue with the discussions, as we've seen in the case of Vietnam, Japan, major Southeast Asian economies, and particularly Japan, even in the case of EU, which is the latest trade deal that they forged as far as the United States is concerned. Donald Trump does not go ahead without a final go from the head of state. So he's awaiting a phone call with Prime Minister Modi, who he refers to as a friend. But as we've seen how Prime Minister has been extremely busy in the Parliament's monsoon session, and that, of course, takes precedence for the Indian Prime Minister. But what we are also learning is that the logistics of a phone call are currently being chalked out between Prime Minister Modi and the US President. Donald Trump is also at the same time extremely mixed about the trade deficit, that if we were to consider just previous financial year of 2024, stood at $45.7 billion with India. We've already seen how he's in fact said that it's an extremely bad idea for Foxconn or Apple to continue with manufacturing in India. And that in itself has been a major dampener for the US economy, because remember, it has also brought with it itself several business opportunities where several small Indian businesses would now be supplying goods to Foxconn for the manufacturing of Apple iPhones. And so we had seen a trailer of that when Donald Trump condemned the move as far as Foxconn was concerned. But like Japan, United States wants India also to increase its investments in the American market. But as I said, this delay is only an indication that India is not bowing down to the whims and fancies of the US president. We are holding our ground firm.
All right, Akansha, thanks a lot for joining us with more on that. We'll wait and hear from the Indian government. I think some sort of a response would be coming very soon. They do need to give a response so that the indication also goes to the market and otherwise. I'm also joined by Saral Patel, Congress spokesperson. Harsh Daya, political analyst, leans towards the BJP, and also Nirupama Soundarajan is an economist joining us. And Vijay Sadana continues to be with us as well. Saral Patel, the Congress party already latching on to this tariff announcement and criticizing the Indian government, particularly Narendra Modi's so-called friendship with Donald Trump, which hasn't really resulted in any favorable treatment for India.
We saw yesterday also, and as we have been seeing for last 100+ days, that at the drop of the hat, US president says he used trade as a carrot, which forced India and Pakistan to have an abrupt ceasefire. Now, despite that, in his 90-minute odd speech yesterday, Prime Minister not even once named Mr. President Donald Trump. He should have called out his lies if that was the case, number one. Number two, the very fact that despite this trade being used as the negotiation for the ceasefire, and if this is the deal that India is getting, it is the raw end of the deal. It is 25%, which is one of the highest in the world. They have not announced any such tariff on any other friendly countries that US trades with. So this is preposterous. This is the failure of India's diplomatic policy, and as well as Prime Minister's personal relationship that he claims to share with with President Trump, that he has called it. He broke all the international protocols, diplomatic protocols, and called for Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar. He hosted President Donald Trump in 2020 in Ahmedabad right before the COVID hit. That 1 lakh people reception didn't warm him up enough.
Okay.
And despite that, this is one of the highest tariff that US has raised, and all their other friendly countries, mind you, the EU, the Japan, the China, they have managed to get a 3-month waiver. it is the failure of our Indian
failure
diplomacy
of the Indian government.
that,
In fact,
that
let me just quote what Jairam Ramesh of the Congress party has tweeted. President Trump has slapped a tariff of 25% plus penalty on imports from India. All that tariff between him and Howdy Modi has meant little. Harsh, is this not fair criticism coming in? I mean, the entire India-US relationship, which seems to be, ascending to a greater level, seems to have come crashing down on multiple fronts.
Shivani, let's first understand the sequence of events. When Trump said that he has, mediated this particular settlement between India and Pakistan, mediated that through trade deal. Where is that trade deal that he's talking about? That is clearly a bluff. And let me make it clear that Trump cannot be trusted. He's not unreliable just with India, but also with US long-term partners such as NATO countries, European Union and Canada. He's no one's friend. ना वो मोदी जी के फ्रेंड है ना वो किसी और कंट्री के फ्रेंड है. He is an erratic businessman who doesn't understand diplomacy. Further, Trump was targeting India on buying military equipment from Russia. I want to make it clear on that as well. No country or Trump can dictate India where we'll get our military equipment from. Russia has been a reliable partner in terms of military equipment buying, and US has not shown that kind of sincerity when it comes to supplying military equipments to us. So, there is no question that he can put up to India. Why is India buying from Russia? This is like the double game that he's playing. And I'm also very sure that Trump's administration time is numbered, and his erratic behavior further proves it. This arm twisting by Trump is not going to work, and let's have trust on Modi's diplomacy and India's diplomacy. We'll surely find some way out of it, and Trump will go back on this as well. If it's, he's saying that by 1st August, he will be, implementing these tariffs. Let me put it forward that by 2nd or 3rd August, he'll go back on this as well. And let's be, positive that at least our biggest export, which are the IT services, are not yet impacted by this. And this will surely result in something good. And you know what has happened? Yesterday's Modi's speech in Parliament has rattled him to this level that suddenly he has raised these tariffs on India to...
Let's not go too far. And there was an August 1 deadline that was anyways looming. It hasn't really come to that. There's a day to go before that. But anyways, I want to go across very quickly to Sanjay Suri, my colleague who's actually in the US right now, joining us with more. Also, Nalin Mehta from Managing Editor Money Control will be with us. Sanjay Suri, this isn't, of course, completely unexpected, but the tone and tenor of the US president certainly does not give a very confidence that much can be worked out to India's favor.
Well, that is putting it mildly. The tone and tenor are really aggressive to the point of being offensive. Just a word saying, yes, while India is a friend, and then on and on and on. This really marks a collapse in all the efforts that have been launched ever since the Prime Minister's visit to the White House in February of this year. That was a meeting where Trump held out the threat of tariffs very firmly, and that meeting did nothing to reduce anything in the announcement that Trump made. That was on Liberation Day, supposedly on April the 2nd. And since then, there have been talks, and in fact, India has been first into this attempt at working out a mini trade deal short of a regular trade deal to follow. And India has made a lot of efforts. We've had Indian teams visiting Washington, and the American trade official visiting Delhi. And we heard only a couple of days back from Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal that a great deal, and he said fantastic progress is being made in the talks between India and the US. But that has been at the level of the nitty-gritty, at the level of the nuts and bolts. The broad picture, as always, now with the US is what Trump's mood is and what his inclination is. In line with that, we've had what we've had. And really, this does mark a collapse. We can certainly hope that Trump will follow the takeover policy, that he chickens out, that he goes back on this. But at the moment, we have what we have, and this does mark a collapse. And not just at the level of trade talks. What he's brought into this is Russia. And really, the question raised finally is India's energy options, not even so much the arms from Russia, the energy
you're
options.
Absolutely right. Already there was a feeling that India can't depend on US as a reliable partner when it comes to defense trade, arms trade. But now this kind of a move by the US president on energy trade with Russia has also perhaps ruffled some feathers. Nalin Mehta is also with us. Nalin, how do you read into this entire development?
So I think if you look at the tariffs imposed on India by Donald Trump and compare it with the tariffs of comparable economies, India falls smack in the middle of that ranking. So, for example, if you compare with Brazil is 50%, Thailand is 36%, Cambodia is 36%. In the Asian neighborhood, Bangladesh is 35%. Canada in North America is 35%. India is 25%, plus the penalties on the unspecified penalties, unspecified so far on buying Russian military equipment and Russian oil. But I think India compares much more. So the 25% is the same as with South Korea or with Malaysia, but is worse off than Philippines at 20% and Vietnam at 20% or Indonesia at 19%. The EU agreement has just been signed at 15% and Japan at 15%. So this is, in terms of what it means for Indian exporters, this of course is a serious issue for Indian exporters, because the trade between US and India has more than doubled in the last decade. It's gone up to $118 billion. And the nature of that trade has also become much more sophisticated. So, for example, machinery is now 23%, used to be 7% in 2013. So two or three things. One, look at the tonality of the message. It was very clear that the negotiation was not going, the negotiation had got stalled. The fifth round of the negotiation between India and US ended earlier in July, and since then there's been a sort of a pregnant silence on the India-US trade deal. Trump has now come out. I think what he has done is he's kept it at 25, which puts it right in the middle of the ranking, puts this penalty notion, but I think he's left the door open for negotiation. It also shows two things. One, a full deal couldn't be worked out. Two, Trump has left out the door for further negotiation, and the language he's used, he's using both carrot and stick, shows that over the next week, 10 days. Again, we can't predict anything. I don't think we should get into the speculation business, but it leaves the door open for further conversation. And by calling India a friend and all of that, Trump is sort of playing it both ways at the moment.
Right. Well, more important is to watch out how India responds to this. Nalin Mehta, thanks a lot for joining us. Let's go back across to our guests who continue to be with us. Vijay Sadada is with us. I'm also joined by Nirupama Soundarajan, who's an economist. Nirupama, what could be Indian response to this? Do you think India will at all bend to some of US's demands vis-a-vis that trade deal because of these tariffs coming into effect, or will we stand firm on that?
I think personally we will stand firm for two reasons. I think first is in terms of where we have been non-compromising has been on dairy and agriculture. And I doubt whether we will actually sway from our current stance. And even if you look at the past comments that have come from the Commerce Minister, they've been very clear saying we speak from a place of strength. Similarly, in terms of the penalty that's been put for any kind of arms sourcing or energy sourcing from Russia, I doubt whether this would be agreeable in terms of whether we will also actually deviate from what we've done before. We also know that right at the beginning we kind of told them, no, we will do what is best for India and India's energy security. I don't see that happening. Where I do see some scope is, although the language was a little harsh from Donald Trump, where he calls them a lot of obnoxious non-tariff barriers. Maybe that's where obnoxious aside as a language, but maybe if the non-tariff barriers are maybe some areas where there would be some room for negotiation, but again, not on at least the sticky points that have been there since the past.
Right. Well, if this is a tactic, certainly Donald Trump, being a businessman that he is, he likes it my way or the highway. He likes to kind of twist you into his position. We've seen that play out in many, many situations, and this whole tariff business is playing out exactly like that. But Vijay Sadana, I want your view on this as well. While you feel that this could be an opportunity for us to internally look at and kind of diversify or change our tactics, will India at all get bullied, if I can use that term, with these tariffs?
See, first of all, you have to appreciate why Trump is behaving like this. there is also a agriculture politics in America.
Hmm.
All the swing states are predominantly agriculture states. So what China has done, China has diverted all the supplies which they were buying from America to Brazil and Argentina. Now there is a surplus stocks lying in America. They are looking for market to dump. Last time when China refused to buy, American government has to spend at least $20 billion to compensate the farmers. This time it is going to be much more. So what Trump is looking at is there is nothing called trade per se, what we are trying to discuss here. Trump is looking for agriculture market where he can dump his surplus. Now think of, other than China, which is the market where he can dump? Can he dump the remaining leftover material, suppose 20, 30 million tons of soybean and corn, into Thailand or Malaysia or Philippines or Europe? There is no buyer because market size is too small compared to India. That is why he is somehow trying to arm twist India that we open up agriculture market. His political promise to his farmer is that I will give you a better deal. Look at his campaign. That is where he was anticipating. So let's not look into simply because trade or textile. He's not interested in textile or anything. He can buy from anywhere else. India is not important for him. For him, what is important is to dumping his surplus agricultural products into Indian market. Now look at Canada has banned imports. Brazil has banned imports. Mexico is not buying from there. China is not buying from there. All have renegotiated their supply sources. Left over is India. That is what we should always keep in mind, that this is the agriculture politics of America, which is creating problem with agriculture politics of India.
No, I
So
get what you're
President
saying,
Trump and
Mr.
Modi,
Sadana. I get what you're
yes,
saying. The only issue for India is that it cannot possibly take on US the way, let's say, China can. Our economy is not at that level. Nirupama ji, I want you to come in on this. In the interim, because India is very focused to kind of expanding its GDP, expanding its per capita income, its trade opportunities. We are very single-mindedly focused on that. And can we then sustain the pressure that US might put on us? I will take that to SC Garg, former finance secretary, actually joining us on the show. Mr. Garg, your first response to this kind of a tariff announcement, plus the villainization of India over the Russian oil buying?
See, there are two points to it. Number one, it is targeted to pressurize India to accept American goods at 0% tariff, accept agricultural kind of goods which we are not prepared otherwise, accept their defense equipment, energy, etc., so that the trade deficit closes as far as America is concerned. Now, if we give in to this and accept all of them, the only advantage which we have America is that we are able to export to them about $80-90 billion, and maybe our exporters are able to earn about $15-20 billion out of that.
Okay.
That is the gain we have. So, but if we concede all of this, this will evaporate. That gain would be gone. So why should we accept these kind of terms from Mr. Trump and the Americans? Instead, we should be taking a line that, all right, if you don't want our goods without 25% duty, fair enough, you take it. We'll sell to you at whatever prices we have been selling. You put the duty there, let your consumer suffer, and that's your problem. So that is the way I think we should be dealing with the tariff point of view. The other issue which you raised about penalizing for doing business with Russia and all, that is our not only our sovereign right to do business with whoever we want to do, but our business right also. So if we find that the importing oil from Russia is in our interest, it doesn't matter to us whether it's in the Russia's interest also or not. But if it is in our interest, we should be able to do business with Russians and import from them. Why should Trump object to that? And therefore, we should continue to do that business.
Okay. In fact, Trump has recently suggested that BRICS countries might also face an extra levy. So, any number of issues he can bring up if he has a problem with that. But Mr. Garg, I want to ask you, how long can India, let's say, withstand the pressure if it was to hold its line that, see, this is the terms on which we can do our business and no more. Can India sustain it for all times to come?
See, what is the big loss? Suppose you sustain it. And in my judgment, American will American exceptionalism will collapse in next 2-3 months. But suppose it doesn't. You have to hold on to for longer, 3 months, 6 months or something. What is our loss? Our loss is that maybe our export to Americans would decline by 25%. That's all.
And we can make that up. We can make that up through other means.
We may or may not make it. We run $100 billion deficit with China. Right? So if we also turn into a kind of less surplus with US or a deficit, is it that existential for us?
Okay.
I don't think it is.
Okay.
And therefore, we should not be concealing. We shouldn't be appearing very weak. We should stay firm and do the business the way business is done. Not the way a person who is out to blackmail you try to make you succumb to his absolutely unreasonable terms.
Absolutely. Mr. Garg, thanks a lot for joining us. And I think that has been the view of the Indian government as well. Maybe not in as many terms as Mr. Garg is saying, but certainly in more diplomatic ways. Bodhisattva Ganguly, Group Consulting Editor, is also joining us. So, Mr. Ganguly, most experts seeming to suggest it's not really the heavens falling. We can take this.
Yes, I would agree with that. The point is that, US-India trade is over 100 billion, but we can take it for some time. I think so. So a number of observations. One is that I think what India can do is to actually step up our own, negotiations with the EU for an FTA. That will act as a signaling device for the US that we're not dependent on them. So that's something which we can accelerate. The other thing to remember is that Trump has done this to various other countries. If you remember, for the EU, he had threatened a tariff of 30%, but he eventually settled for 15% as part of the, in the deal which was announced a couple of days back. He's also announced much higher tariffs for Canada and Mexico, but he's later backed down. So I think the way to deal with this, yes, I mean, it looks like a setback, but I think we need to be calm. And I think we should treat this as an opening gambit and then negotiate with the US and try to bring down the tariff to 15%. I mean, I'm saying 15%. Ideally, it should be 10%. But apart from the UK, which has got 10%, no one else has got. So, I mean, the EU is at 15%, which is one of the lowest. I think Japan is at 15%. Vietnam is at 20%. So we should aim, I think, at 15% and treat this as a negotiating. As a negotiating tactic. I mean, he's done this to many other countries. Tariffs on Brazil are 50%, for instance.
How do you look at the particular insistence that US is now making very openly with its trade, attaching it to its trade relationship with countries over what, for example, was India's stand on buying Russian oil and energy?
Yeah, I was going to come to that. So that's a slight, that is something which is somewhat concerning. Because if you see all of Trump's statements on Truth Social over, announcing all these tariffs, this is the first time he's referred to higher tariffs on a particular country for buying Russian oil. So what he's referring to is there is a legislation,
yes,
which has been proposed by Senator Lindsey Graham, who's a close ally of Trump, which is essentially calls for imposing, if my memory serves me right, very high tariffs. I think it's 500%, subject to correction, but I think it's 500% tariff on anyone who buys petroleum products and uranium for Russia. Uranium part is not important, petroleum products is, and it's aimed at China and India. And Lindsey Graham has mentioned both China and India in interviews that he has given. Now, this is the first time Trump has brought this up. So this is concerning. Now, this we have to remember, though, that this legislation is yet to be enacted.
Yes.
Right. So it will take some time for it to come into force. But if they're serious and if they actually say that if you buy oil from Russia, simply put, you face a tariff of 500% from the US. Now, that is like an embargo. Right. So that is a point of view of concern because see, while the issue also is that we need our goods trade with the US might not be that much, but the US is a huge market. It's a huge market for our services, all our software exports. All the TCS and Infys of the world rely on the US market. So that's something which we'll have to be very, conscious about. So it's something which needs to be navigated.
Yes.
And we,
we'll continue to do so. Of course, the Indian government or the, the establishment has made it very clear that, they're in this for the long haul. They're in no hurry. They will, of course, weather the storm as it comes. But Mr. Ganguly, I want to understand from you, since this whole tariff business began, experts have been talking about how the reordering or the restructuring of the trade world is supposed to take place, and this will only hasten that. Do you think the rest of the world is prepared for that, to stand up to this Trump bullying, if one can use that word?
You can certainly use the word. He is, he's a big, he's a very big, that's his style. That's his trademark style. And he's bullying, and certainly India has, certainly faced a bullying episode, to use language from the workplaces and all that. It's certainly but the point, but so far, but the commentary so far has actually been, unfortunately, in my view, that he's getting away with it.
Yeah.
Right. For example, the EU commissioner has been widely panned for, I think the commentary is that Trump ate her for breakfast because, because the EU's exports to the US face a 15% tariff, and the US gets to export 0% across a huge, range of sectors. And that's so if you look at 15%, 20% for Vietnam, 19% for Indonesia, these are, and in return, the US gets to export at 0%. So yes, so far he has got away with it.
On top of that is of course, the very vociferous MAGA constituency for him in America, which is also obviously building this up as something that is working, and therefore he's kind of doubling down on this quite a bit. Do stay with us. I do hand over to my colleague Anand Narasimhan now joining us. This continues to be, Anand, the big focus, the Trump tariff.
Yes, it is. And good evening to our viewers, and thanks, Shivani. Home Minister Amit Shah is going to be addressing the Rajya Sabha in a bit. But will the opposition try and corner the government around the Trump tariffs? Is Bharat going to continue to hold steadfast? Union Minister Piyush Goyal, while speaking with us in London on the sidelines of CETA being signed, had said that more or less the contours are ready, but it's Trump who's holding the cards, because he wants Bharat to open up and also to ease back on our energy consumption or energy purchases from Russia. Will we take to this bullying and bulldozing? Will Bharat continue to walk on the path of strategic autonomy and also choose its friends, choose with who it trades with, depending upon its own interests? Both nations wanting to push its interests. Bodhisattva Ganguly and Parikshit are with us. We should have our other guests too. But quickly, we just want to play out a short excerpt of what Union Minister, Commerce and Industries Minister Piyush Goyal told us just a few days ago about the trade deal with the US.
A deal can only be struck when it's a win-win for both parties. कभी भी जीवन में एक तरफा सौदा नहीं होता है. मूल दोनों का एक दूसरे को सही दाम मिले तभी सौदा हो सकता है. And this particular deal is a win-win. Both countries, our stakeholders, our businesses, our farmers, our small and medium enterprises, our startups, our workers, everybody stands to benefit. And a very balanced deal, fair, equitable, gives preferential access for areas of our interest in UK, gives them an opportunity to do more business in areas of their interest. But we don't compete with each other, we complement each other. A $50,000 per capita economy cannot produce the kind of goods we want to sell to them. Textiles, footwear, toys, furniture, leather products, food processing or processed foods, agricultural products processed, auto parts, aircraft parts, the engineering stuff, gem and jewelry, intricate jewelry. There's so many things. They just can't compete.
Right.
We can't make the kind of high-flying medical devices.
Please, धोला जी बैठिए प्लीज, प्लीज आप सब बैठिए, नहीं प्लीज प्लीज, मैंने माननीय गृह मंत्री जी को बुलाया बोलने के लिए, प्लीज प्रमोद जी एक मिनट, पॉइंट ऑफ ऑर्डर क्या है आपको बताएं, लेट देम स्पीक, बोलिए पॉइंट ऑफ ऑर्डर क्या है।
माननीय गृह मंत्री जी बोले, तुमको पूरा अधिकार है आर्टिकल 75 में बोलने का।
तिवारी जी बहिष्कार करने का ट्राई कर रहे हो क्या?
कहीं कोई आपत्ति नहीं,
रूल क्या है? रूल
एक सदन में प्रधानमंत्री
ये सामूहिक जिम्मेदारी है, सरकार की सामूहिक जिम्मेदारी है। माननीय गृह मंत्री जी जवाब देंगे। नो प्लीज, माननीय गृह मंत्री जी आप बोले सही नहीं है, प्लीज गो बैक टू योर सीट्स, गो बैक टू योर सीट्स। सुष्मिता जी प्लीज गो बैक टू योर सीट्स, गो बैक टू योर सीट्स प्लीज। माननीय गृह मंत्री जी बोले। सभापति महोदय, सिर्फ माननीय गृह मंत्री जी के बाद में जाएगी आपका आचरण असंसदीय गांव में पाकिस्तानी आतंकवादियों द्वारा जो नृशंस हमला हुआ और उसके जवाब में भारत सरकार ने और भारत की सेनाओं ने जो मजबूत जवाब पाकिस्तान के आतंकवादी ग्रुप्स को और पाकिस्तान को स्वयं को दिया ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के माध्यम से, उसका पर सदन में चर्चा पर मैं हिस्सा लेने के लिए खड़ा हूं। भाई प्लीज एक मिनट सुनो, एक मिनट प्लीज मैं आपका जवाब देना चाहता हूँ प्लीज। हाँ यार एक मिनट सुनो, आप अपनी जगह नहीं करा प्लीज। दिस इज माननीय जैसे पूछ रहे पीएम कहा है, इसका जवाब दे रहा हूँ। एक मिनट सुनो भाई, आपकी जो डिमांड है उसी का जवाब दे रहा हूँ। माननीय अध्यक्ष जी, पीएम साहब इनकी ऑफिस में ही है, उनको ज्यादा सुनने का शौक है क्या? भाई मेरे से निपट रहा है, काहे को प्रधानमंत्री जी को बुला रहे हो? और तकलीफ होगी, ये समझते नहीं है साहब। माननीय सभापति जी, सबसे पहले पहलगांव हमले में हमारे देश के जो निर्दोष नागरिकों को धर्म पूछकर चुन कर उनके परिवार के सामने मारा गया। मैं उन सभी दिवंगत नागरिकों के परिवार के साथ मेरी संवेदना व्यक्त करता हूं। जब ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के बाद पाकिस्तान ने गोलीबारी करी, वो गोलीबारी में कुछ नागरिक हताहत हुए, वो नागरिकों के परिवारजनों के प्रति भी मैं गहरी संवेदना व्यक्त करना चाहता हूं। माननीय अध्यक्ष जी, ऑपरेशन सिंदूर, ऑपरेशन महादेव, ये दोनों के लिए जिन सुरक्षा बलों ने भारत का सम्मान बढ़ाया है, वो सभी को मैं हृदय पूर्वक बहुत बहुत साधुवाद देना चाहता हूं। मैं सम्माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी को भी बहुत बहुत अभिनंदन करना चाहता हूं कि इन्होंने देश की 140 करोड़ की जनता की जो इच्छा थी उसका प्रतिघोष करते हुए सटीक जवाब देने की दृढ़ राजनीतिक इच्छा शक्ति बताई। इसके लिए मैं सम्माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी को भी अभिनंदन करना चाहता हूं। मान्यवर, सबसे पहले मैं ऑपरेशन महादेव के बारे में बताना चाहता हूं। माननीय परसों ही प्लीज कश्मीर में प्लीज आपको माननीय नेता प्रतिपक्ष सबने सुना, ये सही आचरण नहीं है आप सबका। प्लीज गो बैक टू योर सीट्स। नो माननीय गृह मंत्री आप बोले। नहीं, खड़गे जी कुछ कहना चाहते हैं तो 1 मिनट के लिए बताने दीजिए। बताएं सर। आप सभी लोग अपनी सीट पर जाएं। माननीय एलओपी बोले प्लीज गो बैक टू योर सीट्स। सर गो बैक टू योर सीट्स। फर्स्ट गो बैक टू योर सीट्स। मिस्टर गोखले, मिस्टर साकेत गोखले, अपनी अपनी सीट पर जाइए। आप अपनी सीट पे नहीं है, प्लीज गो बैक टू योर सीट। सर मनोज जी प्लीज गो बैक टू योर सीट। गो बैक टू योर सीट्स। Go back to your designated seats. Then only available. Yes, माननीय
डिप्टी चेयरमैन साहब, मैं इसलिए खड़ा हूं।
ये क्या हुआ? शक्ति सिंह जी।
तो मैं
Do not disturb the house.
सब सदन के मेंबर्स का ये पहले से ही डिमांड थी कि 16 घंटे चर्चा होने के बाद हमको इस सदन में प्रधानमंत्री आकर प्रकट होकर वो अपनी बातें रखेंगे और समाधान जो भी हमने सवाल उठाए हैं, बहुत से सवाल उनको संबंधित है। ये नहीं कि आप कैपेबल नहीं है रिप्लाई देने के लिए, ये नहीं कहता मैं। हम आपको निपटाएंगे, तुम हमारे को निपटाओ, हम खेल खेलेंगे। लेकिन जिस प्रधानमंत्री यहाँ रहते हुए भी अगर इस सदन में नहीं आते तो इस सदन का अपमान है।
धन्यवाद।
नहीं, ये नहीं हो गया। तो इसीलिए
आपकी बात
सदन का अपमान करना, सदस्यों का अपमान करना ठीक नहीं है।
माननीय गृह मंत्री जी, मैं अभी भाषण नहीं कर रहा हूँ। माननीय अध्यक्ष जी, इनके मुद्दे का जवाब दे रहा हूँ। अब सुनिए खड़गे साहब, प्लीज लिसन प्लीज। मैं आपको माननीय खड़गे जी, मैं आपको इन्फॉर्म करना चाहूंगा, बीएससी मीटिंग में मैंने ऑलरेडी एक्सप्लेन किया था आपके सदस्यों को कि सरकार की ओर से माननीय कोई मंत्री जवाब दे सकता, ये रूलिंग है, आप फोर्स नहीं कर सकते किसी को। प्लीज माननीय गृह मंत्री जी आप बोल।
और मान्यवर खड़गे साहब उठा रहे हैं ज्यादातर महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दों पर कांग्रेस पार्टी खड़गे साहब को बोलने नहीं देती है, पीछे से सारे को खड़े करती है और वो ये मुद्दा उठा रहे हैं।
आपने बोल दिया। प्लीज 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 लेट हिम स्पीक। आपको मौका मिला, आपने बोला।
इम्पार्शियल
सर,
जज का काम कर, लेकिन आप हर बात को टोकते रहते हो।
नहीं, आपने मौका दिया, बोला।
अगर ये हम क्या यहाँ खेलने आए क्या?
आपने को मौका दिया, आपने बोला हमारे पास, मैंने भी बताया कि मैंने
हर एक
में क्या स्पष्ट किया।
तो आपने बात की, प्रधानमंत्री की बात की, इधर आपका स्टेटमेंट इसका नाम पर भी लाया हूँ। प्रधानमंत्री को यहाँ
माने प्लीज मान्यवर,
इसीलिए
ये विपक्ष की मांग और स्टैंड दोनों उचित नहीं है, क्योंकि बिजनेस एडवाइजरी कमेटी में ये निर्णय लिया गया था, चर्चा आप जितनी चाहोगी हो करेंगे, जवाब कौन देगा वो सरकार तय करेगी, माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी तय। मुझे मालूम है मान्यवर ये क्यों जा रहे हैं, मुझे मालूम है मान्यवर मुझे क्यों जा रहे हैं। वो इसलिए जा रहे हैं कि इतने सालों तक वोट बैंक प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए, आतंकवाद को रोकने के लिए इन्होंने कुछ नहीं किया। ये डिबेट सुनी ही नहीं सकते, ये जवाब है।
जब भी ये कह रहे हैं और कोई लीडर ऑपोजिशन होता और ये बोलता तब तो मैं समझता, खड़गे साहब बोल रहे हैं। ज्यादातर महत्वपूर्ण चर्चाओं में कांग्रेस पार्टी उनके नेता को, लीडर ऑफ ऑपोजिशन को बोलने ही नहीं देती है। और वो मुद्दा उठा रहे हैं कि माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी जवाब। मान्यवर, मैं सबसे पहले ऑपरेशन महादेव के लिए बताना चाहूंगा। परसों ही बहुत लंबे समय से चल रहे हुए एक ऑपरेशन का अंत आया और वो ऑपरेशन के तहत 3 आतंकवादी, सुलेमान उर्फे फैजल जट, अफगान और जिब्रान, वो तीनों हमारी सुरक्षा बलों ने इनको मौत के घाट उतार दिया। मान्यवर, सुलेमान ए श्रेणी का लश्कर तैयबा का कमांडर था। उसने पहलगांव हमले में उसकी ही राइफल से गोलियां चली थी। गगनगिर में भी उसकी राइफल से गोलियां चली थी और उसको हमारे सुरक्षा बलों ने कश्मीर छोड़कर पाकिस्तान भागने नहीं दिया। अफगान भी ए ग्रेड का लश्कर तैयबा का कमांडर था और जिब्रान भी उच्च आला दर्जे का लश्कर तैयबा का आतंकवादी था। मान्यवर, इससे स्पष्ट हो गया है कि ये आतंकवादी हमले में लश्कर तैयबा का हाथ था। इसके इशारे पर ही ये घटना हुई थी। और साहब देखिए, प्रधानमंत्री जी ने सेना को जो हुक्म दिया ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में, मैं बाद में बताऊंगा, उसने लश्कर तैयबा के हेडक्वार्टर को छिन्न विछिन्न कर दिया। इनको भेजने वाले भी मारे गए और जिन्होंने गोली चलाई थी वो भी मारे गए। एक प्रकार से ऑपरेशन महादेव और ऑपरेशन सिंदूर दो इकट्ठा होता है तो दुनिया के सभी आतंकवादी हमलों में सबसे सटीक, सख्त और त्वरित जवाब माननीय प्रधानमंत्री के नेतृत्व में भारत के सुरक्षा बलों ने दिया। लश्कर तैयबा का आप सभी जानते हैं कि एक प्रतिबंधित संगठन है। कुछ ही समय के बाद इनके एक आउटफिट टीआरएफ ने जिम्मेदारी ली कि हमने ये निर्दोष नागरिकों को मौत के घाट उतारा है। मान्यवर, उसी दिन मैं वहां पहुंच गया था। सुरक्षा रिव्यू की मीटिंग हुई थी और सुरक्षा रिव्यू की मीटिंग में तय हुआ था कि आप जल्दी से जल्दी इनको पकड़िए, मगर उससे भी जल्दी ये लोग देश छोड़कर पाकिस्तान न भाग जाए इसकी चिंता करिए। इसलिए 100 दिन के बाद भी वो उपलब्ध मिले और मारे गए। मान्यवर, उनके पास से 3 राइफलें बरामद, एक 19 M4 कार्बाइन अमेरिकन राइफल है और 2 AK-47 राइफल है। जिस दिन पहलगांव में घटना हुई, हमारे निर्दोष नागरिकों को मारा गया, उस दिन वहां से एनआईए ने खाली कारतूसों को कब्जे लिया था। इनके मारे जाने के पहले ही वो खाली कारतूसों का फोरेंसिक साइंस लेबोरेटरी में एक प्रकार से इसकी जन्म कुंडली निकाली थी कि कौन सी राइफल से चले हैं। और जब ये मारे गए, इनके पास से भी जो राइफलें मिली, फोरेंसिक साइंस लेबोरेटरी में चंडीगढ़ में रात को फोरेंसिक टेस्टिंग कर 100% मिलान हुआ है कि इन्हीं 3 राइफलों का उपयोग किया गया था, जिसमें से 44 कारतूस AK-19 M4 के थे और 25 कारतूस AK-47 राइफल के थे। इसलिए अब कोई बहस भी नहीं बची है, कोई शको शुबह भी नहीं बचा है कि इन्होंने मारा था या नहीं था। एनआईए ने बहुत विगत जांच करी है मान्यवर, लगभग 1055 लोगों के स्टेटमेंट लिए हैं। इसके आधार पर इनके रेखाचित्र भी बनाए गए। उसके बाद ट्रैकिंग करते हुए 2 दिन जिन्होंने इनको आसरा दिया था वो ढोंक के मालिकों को और उनकी वृद्ध माता को भी पूछताछ करी थी। ये जो मृतदेह मिले आतंकवादियों के, उसका परिचय, उसकी शिनाख्त ये तीनों लोगों ने कर ली है। ये तीनों लोगों ने कहा है कि यही आतंकवादी है जो 21 तारीख को हमारे ढोंक में रुके थे और हमसे खाना लेकर गए थे। तो एक और सबूत हमारे पास आ चुका है। चेहरे का मिलान भी कैमरे के माध्यम से बहुत अच्छे तरीके से संतोषजनक रीत से हुआ है। और ये जो सफल ऑपरेशन हुआ मान्यवर, इसलिए मैं सेना, सीआरपीएफ, जम्मू कश्मीर पुलिस, एनआईए के अधिकारी और एफएसएल के विद्वान अधिकारियों को बहुत बहुत साधुवाद देना चाहता हूं। और ये जो ऑपरेशन चला मान्यवर, आईबी द्वारा 22 मई को, मतलब लगभग 1 माह बाद हमें सूचना मिल गई थी कि ये जगह पे टेररिस्ट लोकेट है। उसके बाद आईबी और मिलिट्री इंटेलिजेंस ने और शिनाख्त करी और लगभग 22 जुलाई को इनके लोरा सेट को ट्रैक करने का काम समाप्त हुआ। एग्जैक्ट पिन पॉइंटेड लोकेशन को आइडेंटिफाई किया गया और फिर एक मीटिंग 4 पैरा, सीआरपीएफ और जम्मू कश्मीर पुलिस तीनों के अफसरों की हुई और स्ट्राइक किया गया। तीनों आतंकवादी मारे गए हैं। कोइंसिडेंट देखिए मान्यवर, देश भर से मुझे बहुत एसएमएस आए थे, विशेषकर जो मारे गए थे उनके परिजनों का, इनके सर में गोली मारिएगा, जब भी मारे तब। तीनों के एनकाउंटर के वक्त तीनों के सर में ही गोली लगा है मान्यवर। मान्यवर, आज ये मारे गए 2 दिन पहले, अब बैठे नहीं हैं, चिदंबरम साहब को बैठना चाहिए था। उन्होंने सवेरे मेरे इस्तीफे की मांग के साथ एक प्रश्न उठाया कि भारत सरकार ने ऑपरेशन सिंदूर करा। ऑपरेशन सिंदूर इसलिए कहा कि ये पाकिस्तानी आतंकवादी थे और पाकिस्तानी आतंकवादी थे, इसका आपके पास सबूत क्या है? वो पूरी दुनिया में ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के जस्टिफिकेशन को चैलेंज कर रहे थे। मैं आज इस सदन के माध्यम से श्री चिदंबरम को पूछना चाहता हूं, आप किसको बचाना चाहते थे? पाकिस्तान को, लश्कर तैयबा को, ये आतंकवादियों को? अरे शर्म नहीं आती मान्यवर? और देखिए महादेव करता है तो क्या करता है। जिस दिन सवाल पूछा उसी दिन ये तीनों आतंकवादी ढेर हो गए और जवाब तो घटनाक्रम ने दिया। मगर ये कांग्रेस पार्टी की मानसिकता पूरी दुनिया के सामने चिदंबरम साहब ने उजागर कर दी। हमारी वोट बैंक के लिए हम पाकिस्तान का समर्थन करते हुए भी नहीं डरेंगे। हमारी वोट बैंक के लिए लश्कर तोयबा को बचाने से भी हम नहीं डरेंगे और हमारी वोट बैंक के लिए आतंकवादियों को शेल्टर देते हुए, शाब्दिक शेल्टर देते हुए भी हम नहीं डरेंगे। मान्यवर, ये कांग्रेस की मानसिकता है। और अभी पृथ्वीराज चौहान साहब का इंटरव्यू आ गया, उन्होंने कहा ऑपरेशन का नाम धर्म के आधार पर रखने के अलावा इनको कुछ नहीं आता है। मान्यवर, कांग्रेस पार्टी बैठी नहीं है, उनको मालूम नहीं है हर हर महादेव सिर्फ धर्म का नारा नहीं है। शिवाजी महाराज ने जो मुगलों के खिलाफ लड़ाई लड़ी, स्वतंत्रता की लड़ाई लड़ी और शिवाजी महाराज की सेना का युद्ध घोष था हर हर महादेव। और ये प्रतीक है हर प्रकार के भारत पर के हमले का, भारत की संप्रभुता पर हमले का और भारत की सीमाओं पर अतिक्रमण के जवाब देने का। और मैं आज यहां से चौहान साहब को भी कहना चाहता हूं कि आप क्या नाम रखना चाहते थे, क्या नाम रखना चाहते, उसका जवाब दीजिए। मान्यवर, ये पूरी चीजों को हिंदू मुस्लिम के दृष्टि से देखते हैं। चौहान साहब का थ्योरी देखे तो आज हमारी सेना के कई सारे हमारी सेना के डिवीजनों का जो नारा है युद्ध घोष है, कहीं प्रभु रामचंद्र की जय, कहीं जोश बोले सो निहाल सत श्री अकाल है, कहीं जाय बलवान जय भगवान है, क्या सियावर रामचंद्र की जय है, कहीं पर काली माता की जय है। ये सारे उद्घोष आप नहीं स्वीकारते हो, ये भाजपा ने रखे हुए नहीं है मान्यवर, ये हमारी सेना के जवानों से मन से निकलने वाला ये युद्धघोष, इसको हिंदू मुस्लिम के दृष्टि से नहीं देखना चाहिए। और कोई कहता है कि आज ही क्यों मारे गए। अब देखिए साहब, भाई कितना जिंदा रखना चाहते हो। मैं भी पूछता हूं आज क्यों मारे गए, मैं तो दूसरी सेकंड मार देना चाहता था, मगर इतना सरल नहीं है। जिन ऊंचाइयों पर छुपे हैं, जिस प्रकार की निर्जन जगहों पे 22 दिन तक सीआरपीएफ सेना और जम्मू कश्मीर की पुलिस ड्रोन से भेजे हुए खाना खाकर इतनी कठिन परिस्थिति में इनका पीछा कर कर मारा है, और आप मुहूर्त पूछ रहे हो क्योंकि क्यों नहीं मानना है आज, क्योंकि आज राहुल गांधी का भाषण था। इस तरह से नहीं चलता है मान्यवर। पूरे देश की जनता कांग्रेस पार्टी को देख रही है, इनकी प्रायोरिटी देश की सुरक्षा नहीं है, राजनीति है। उनकी प्रायोरिटी आतंकवाद को समाप्त करना नहीं है, अपनी वोट बैंक है। उनकी प्रायोरिटी हमारी सीमा की सुरक्षा नहीं है, उनका सेक्युलर और एपीसमेंट का पॉलिटिक्स है मान्यवर। मगर हम इससे इत्तेफाक नहीं रखते मान्यवर। आज मैं ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के बारे में भी बताना चाहता हूं। 22 अप्रैल को हमला हुआ, 22 अप्रैल को ही मेरी प्रधानमंत्री जी से बात हुई, वो विदेश थे। लगभग 2-2:30 बजे के सुमार पे बात हुई। मैं शाम होने से पहले ही श्रीनगर पहुंच गया था। दूसरे दिन सुबह सुरक्षा बैठक उसी रात को कर दूसरे दिन सुबह जहां मृतदेह थे वहां जाकर उनको श्रद्धांजलि देने के लिए गया। माननीय, वो मेरे जीवन का ऐसा दिन है जो मैं कभी नहीं भूल सकता। एक 6 दिन की शादी, एक बच्ची ने जिसकी शादी को 6 दिन हुए हैं, वो विधवा होकर हमें पूछती थी कब इसका बदला लिया जाएगा। मान्यवर, सब लोग शुद्ध थे, ना पानी पिया था, ना चाय पी थी, ना पीने की स्थिति थी। मैं मेरे जीवन में वो दृश्य नहीं भूल। आज भी वो दृश्य आ जाता है तो नींद से खड़ा हो जाए, इस प्रकार की वेदना होती है मान्यवर। ऐसा जघन्य अपराध कभी नहीं हुआ। धर्म के नाम पर पूछकर चूम कर इनके परिजनों के सामने मरे, छोटी बच्चियां, छोटे बच्चे, वृद्ध मां, उनकी पत्नियां, उनकी बहनें, इस सब के सामने मारा गया। और क्यों मारा गया? क्योंकि वो संदेश देना चाहते थे कि टेररिज्म से मुक्त हम कश्मीर को नहीं होने। मैं आज इस सदन से उनको संदेश देना चाहता हूं, जितना हो सके उतना प्रयास करना। कश्मीर आतंकवाद से मुक्त होकर रहेगा और होकर ये नरेंद्र मोदी का संकल्प। मान्यवर, 23 अप्रैल को, इसके पहले कल भाषण में कहा, वहां पर आज भी बोले, मैं बैठा था कि 24 अप्रैल को मोदी जी चुनावी सभा करने गए। हमारे साथी ने जवाब दिया इनका, परंतु मान्यवर, मैं सदन का रिकॉर्ड क्लियर हो इसलिए मोदी जी वो सभा में क्या बोले थे वो कहना चाहता हूं। मोदी जी ने 24 अप्रैल को बिहार की जनसभा में जो कहा था वो चुनावी सभा नहीं थी, वो 140 करोड़ भारतीयों के गुस्से का प्रतिघोष, जो इस देश के प्रधानमंत्री की जिम्मेदारी है कि देश की जनता की भावनाओं दुनिया के सामने ढंग से रखे। मैं कोट अनकोट उनके भाषण को पढ़ता हूं। मैंने 22 अप्रैल को पहलगांव का ये हमला केवल निहत्थे पर्यटकों पर नहीं बल्कि पूरे भारत की आत्मा पर हुआ एक दुस्साहसपूर्ण प्रहार है। आतंकवाद के प्रति दृढ़ और कड़ा रुख, आतंकवादियों और इस हमले की साजिश रचने वालों की कल्पना से भी बढ़कर उनको बड़ी सजा दी जाएगी। आतंकियों के बीच बची खुची जितनी भी भूमि है उसको मिट्टी में मिलाने का समय आ गया। 140 करोड़ भारतीय इस बात के लिए एकजुट है कि आतंक के आकाओं की कमर तोड़ दी जाएगी। भारत हर एक आतंकवादी और उनकी समर्थकों की पहचान करेगा, उनका पता लगाएगा, उनको दंडित करेगा। आतंकवाद कभी भी भारत की आत्मा को तोड़ नहीं पाएगा। न्याय सुनिश्चित करने के हर प्रयास किए जाएंगे। और आज मैं मोदी जी को बहुत बहुत साधुवाद देता हूं उनकी दूरदर्शिता। उनका बोला हुआ एक एक शब्द आज सच हुआ है। उन्होंने कहा था आतंकवादियों की बची खुची जमीन मिला दे, मिट्टी में मिला देंगे। साहब, उनके ट्रेनिंग के बाद मिट्टी में मिले हैं, इनके हेडक्वार्टर मिले हैं, उनके लॉन्च पैड भी मिट्टी में मिलकर जमीन दोस्त। उन्होंने कहा कि इनके आकाओं को नहीं छोड़ेंगे। मैं बाद में लिस्ट पढ़ता हूं। इनको भेजने वालों को भी हमारी सेनाओं ने मिट्टी में मिला दिया। उन्होंने कहा आतंकवादियों को भी नहीं छोड़े। ऑपरेशन महादेव ने वो तीनों आतंकवादियों को समाप्त कर दिया। मान्यवर, एक प्रकार से मोदी जी ने कहा हुआ वाक्य, हमारी सेना, हमारी वायुसेना, हमारी जल सेना और सभी पैरामिलिट्री फोर्स और जम्मू कश्मीर पुलिस ने उसको अपना कर्म का रास्ता बना दिया और कठोर दंड देने का काम किया है। मान्यवर, 23 अप्रैल को ही एक सीसीएस की मीटिंग बुलाई गई। सीसीएस की मीटिंग में कठोर संदेश देने का काम न केवल पाकिस्तान को, पूरी दुनिया को, कि भारत की सीमा और भारत की सेना, भारत के नागरिक और भारत की संप्रभुता इसके साथ खिलवाड़ नहीं करते, वरना परिणाम भुगतने पड़ते हैं। उन्होंने तय किया सीसीएस की बैठक में 1960 की जवाहरलाल नेहरू के द्वारा की गई एक तरफा पाकिस्तान के फायदे वाली सिंधु जल संधि को तत्काल प्रभाव से रोक लिया। मान्यवर, ऐतिहासिक फैसला है। हम सब वर्षों से मानते थे कि हिंदू जल संधि एक तरफा है। हमारा पानी 80% वहां नहीं जा सकता। मान्यवर, वहां तक कि वहां से गाद निकालने की भी परमिशन, उनकी कैनाल बनाने के पैसे भी भारत ने भेजे। और मान्यवर, ये पानी पर अधिकार है भारत के किसानों। कश्मीर, पंजाब, हरियाणा, राजस्थान और दिल्ली का पीने का पानी अब कुछ ही समय में सिंधु के माध्यम से राजस्थान तक पहुंचेगा। एकीकृत जहाज चौकी अटारी की जो चल रही थी उसको हमने बंद कर दिया। सार्क वीजा समाप्त कर दिया। 24 घंटे में सारे पाकिस्तानी नागरिकों को हमने वापस भेजना शुरू कर दिया। नई दिल्ली स्थित पाकिस्तानी उच्चायोग में रक्षा, सैन्य, नौसेना और वायुसेना के सलाहकारों को अवांछित व्यक्ति घोषित किया गया और दोनों उच्चायोग में स्टाफ को कम करा दिया गया। 55 से घटकर 30 करा दिया। और सीसीएस ने संकल्प लिया कि भेजने वाले और कृत्य करने वाले दोनों को दंडित किया जाएगा। इसके लिए सेना को खुली छूट देने का काम सीसीएस ने। ये पूछ रहे थे कल क्या हुआ, कैसे हुआ? सीसीएस के फैसले जो है वो मीडिया में आए थे, मगर उनको पढ़ना नहीं है, क्योंकि सारे जो फैसले लिए वो उनके द्वारा किए हुए निर्णयों को रद्द करने के और उनकी नीतियों के खिलाफ जो निर्णय हुए वो है। मान्यवर, 30 अप्रैल को सशस्त्र बलों को ऑपरेशनल फ्रीडम देने का काम प्रधानमंत्री जी ने किया कि रक्षा मंत्रालय और सेना दोनों मिलकर तय करेंगे टारगेट क्या होगा, तरीका क्या होगा, स्थान क्या होगा और समय क्या होगा। और इसको हमारे सेना के जवानों ने इसको बहुत बखूबी निभाया। मान्यवर, मैं तीनों सेनाओं को इस सदन के इस चर्चा में बहुत बहुत सम्मान के साथ साधुवाद देता हूं। 7 मई को रात को 1:04 पर पाकिस्तान के 9 आतंकी अड्डों को ध्वस्त कर दिया। रक्षा मंत्री जी ने लोकसभा में बताया कम से कम 100 लोग, 100 से ज्यादा मरे मगर कम से कम 100 मरे। और मान्यवर, लश्कर तैयबा, जैसे मोहम्मद और हिजबुल मुजाहिदीन, ये तीनों के हेडक्वार्टर को ध्वस्त करने का काम नरेंद्र मोदी सरकार ने किया, हमारी सेनाओं ने। और मान्यवर, हमने तुरंत ही उनको सूचना दी थी। हमने उनको बताया मरकज सुभानअल्लाह बहावलपुर, मरकज तैयबा मुरीद के महमूना जाया कैंप सियालकोट, शारजाल कैंप सियालकोट, सवाई नाला कैंप मुजफ्फराबाद, सैयदना बिलाल कैंप मुजफ्फराबाद, गुलपुर कैंप कोटली, बरनाल कैंप बिम्बर्ग और अब्बास कैंप कोटली, उसको हमने समाप्त कर दिया है, तोड़ दिया है। और ये हमारे आत्मरक्षा के अधिकारों को उपयोग करते हुए कहा है, हमारी कार्यवाही समाप्त हुई है। मैं बाद में आता हूं, ये पाक ऑक्यूपाई कश्मीर क्यों नहीं लिया, ये क्यों नहीं करा, वो क्यों नहीं करा। पहले तो वो सोचते थे कि कुछ ही नहीं होगा, हो गया तो ये क्यों नहीं हुआ। मैं कांग्रेस पार्टी को कहना चाहता हूं, पाक ऑक्यूपाई कश्मीर आपने दिया था, मगर लेने का काम भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार ही करेगी और कोई नहीं। मानवर, हमने तो हमला किया था आतंकवादी अड्डों पर, उनके हेडक्वार्टर पर, उनके संगठनों पर, उनके ट्रेनिंग कैंप पर, उनके लॉन्चिंग पैड पर, और हमारे आतंकवाद के ऊपर ये हमले को पाकिस्तान अपने पर का हमला समझ बैठा। और उन्होंने 8 मई को अपने रिहायशी इलाकों पर गोलीबारी की। हमारे सेना के इंस्टॉलेशन पर मिसाइल शूट, ड्रोन फेंक, कोई पहुंच नहीं पाया, मगर नजदीक की सीमा में गोलीबारी से निर्दोष नागरिक जो घूम रहे थे वो हताहत हुए। मान्यवर, फिर भी भारत ने संयम रखा। उन्होंने गुरुद्वारा तोड़ा, हम कुछ नहीं बोले। उन्होंने मंदिर तोड़ा, कुछ नहीं बोले। भारत ने तय कर लिया कि हम इसका जवाब उनकी रक्षा की क्षमता को क्षीण करने के लिए, कम करने के लिए। और इसलिए 9 मई को भारत की सेना ने 11 एयरबेस को ध्वस्त कर दिया, इनके डिफेंस इंस्टॉलेशन और एयरबेस। 8 एयरबेस नूरखान, मुरीद, सरगुर्दा, रफीकी, रहमयार खान, जकोबाबाद, सुक्कुर, भोलारी, 6 रडार सिस्टम, सुक्कुर, लाहौर, आरिफवाला, चुनेन, जकोबाबाद और नयाचौर, और सरफेस टू एयर गाइडेड मिसाइल्स की सिस्टम लाहौर और ओकारा। पाकिस्तान ने हमले के बाद मान्यवर लड़ने की स्थिति में ही नहीं। ये पूछ रहे हैं किसके कहने पर समाधान हुआ, किसके कहने पर समाधान हुआ, किसी के कहने पर समाधान नहीं हुआ। पाकिस्तान घुटनों के बल हमारे डीजीएमओ को फोन किया कि भाई बंद करो। पहले से हमारा मकसद युद्ध का नहीं था, ना पाकिस्तान के अवाम को हम नुकसान करना चाहते थे। मोदी जी ने तुरंत कहा कि अगर पाकिस्तान रोकता है तो रोक लीजिए, और इसको भी राहुल गांधी आगे बढ़ा रहे हैं और पूछ रहे हैं। कुछ लोगों ने आशंका की कि कौन मरा वहां। मानवर, उनको मालूम नहीं है। उनके समय में जो जघन्य आपराधिक घटनाएं हुई थी, आतंकवादी घटनाएं हुई थी, वो घटना को घटाने वाले आतंकवादी हमें पूछते थे। मुझे तो कई लोगों ने पूछा कि वे 90 दिन हुए क्या हुआ, 95 दिन हुए क्या हुआ, रोज 5 फोन आते। मगर उनके समय में जो बड़ी बड़ी आतंकवादी वारदातें हुई थी, मुंबई ट्रेन ब्लास्ट से लेकर मुंबई पर हमले की, उसके आरोपी आतंकवादी हमारे ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में मारे गए। मान्यवर, ऑपरेशन हाफिज मोहम्मद जमील जैसे मोहम्मद का प्रमुख, मौलाना मसूद का बड़ा बहनोई, मुदस्सर खादियान मरकज तैयबा का प्रभारी, मोहम्मद हमजा जमील जैम और ऑपरेटिव मसूद अजहर का भतीजा, मोहम्मद यूनुस अजहर जैसे मोहम्मद का अमीर, मोहम्मद हसन खान जैम ऑपरेटिव, मोहम्मद हसन वो गंभीर रूप से घायल हुए हैं, जैम का वास्तविक प्रमुख अब्दुल मलिक, खालिद अबू अक्स और नोमान मलिक, ये सारे इतने घायल हुए हैं कि अब कुछ कर नहीं सकते। मान्यवर, ये जो हमला हुआ वो उन्होंने इनके दिल पर हमला किया है, आतंकवाद के दिल पर पहली बार प्रहार किया। मान्यवर, पहले भी हमने सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक करी, एयर स्ट्राइक करी। एक प्रकार से सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक और एयर स्ट्राइक दोनों पाक ऑक्यूपाई कश्मीर में थी। मेरे जैसे लोग तो मानते हैं कि हमारी भूमि पर ही हमने हमला किया था, क्योंकि पाक ऑक्यूपाई कश्मीर ये सदन के द्वारा स्वीकारा हुआ संकल्प है कि पाक ऑक्यूपाई कश्मीर भारत का है। मगर पहली बार पाकिस्तान की सरहद में जाकर हमारी सेना ने पराक्रम दिखाया है और आतंकवादियों के अड्डों को, उनके ट्रेनिंग कैंप को और उनके लॉन्चिंग पैड्स को खत्म करने का काम किया है। मान्यवर, ये चिदंबरम साहब कल भाषण में बोले कि ये नहीं कहा जा सकता कि ऑपरेशन सिंदूर निर्णायक था। चिदंबरम साहब यहां है नहीं, मगर मैं उनको जवाब देना जरूर चाहता हूं कि चिदंबरम साहब, अगर 65 की लड़ाई निर्णायक थी क्या, तो फिर टेररिज्म क्यों फैला? 71 की लड़ाई निर्णायक थी क्या, तो टेररिज्म क्यों फैला? और अनेक बार जो कार्यवाही हुई वो निर्णायक थी क्या? मान्यवर, जब तक दुश्मन या तो डर नहीं जाता या सुधर नहीं जाता, कभी निर्णायक अंत नहीं आएगा। मान्यवर, इतने सालों तक उनको डराने की, दंडित करने की कोई प्रक्रिया ही नहीं हुई। क्यों डरेंगे वो? हम तो डोजियर पर डोजियर भेजते रहे, कभी उनको जवाब नहीं दिया। नरेंद्र मोदी ने जवाब दिया। मान्यवर, सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक करी, एयर स्ट्राइक करी और ऑपरेशन सिंदूर। खौफ पैदा हो गया। मुझे मालूम नहीं, मेरे पास सूचना नहीं, रात को भी जब जाते होंगे, स्वप्न में हमारी मिसाइल से दिखाई पड़ती है। ये डर से ही शांति होती है, ये सुधरने वाले लोग नहीं है। मान्यवर, मगर चिदंबरम साहब कहते हैं कि आतंकी पाकिस्तान से आए थे, इसका सबूत क्या है? चिदंबरम साहब, सबूत तो हमारी एजेंसियों ने ढूंढ लिया। अब आप क्या बोले थे, इस पर क्या बोलना चाहते? मान्यवर, इनके चिदंबरम जी के कार्यकाल में ही अफजल गुरी की फांसी जब तक वो गृह मंत्री नहीं गए नहीं हुई। मान्यवर, बंबई का हमला, बंबई के हमले के बाद आज ये दिग्विजय सिंह चले गए हैं, उन्होंने कहा है तो आरएसएस ने कराया। मान्यवर, ये क्या बोल रहे हैं? किसके लिए बोल रहे हैं? किसको बचा रहे हैं? क्या कहना चाहते हैं? और हिंदू टेरर का सगुफा किसने छोड़ा? मैं आज दुनिया के सामने, देश की जनता के सामने गर्व से कहता हूं कि हिंदू कभी टेररिस्ट नहीं हो सकता। हम कभी टेररिस्ट नहीं हो सकते। क्या कहना चाहते? फर्जी टाइप के केस बनाए, एक भी केस अदालत में नहीं टिका। देशभक्त संगठनों पर आरोप लगाए आपने, सिर्फ आपकी छिछोरी राजनीति के लिए, क्षुल्लक फायदे के लिए। और फिर क्या कर लिया? फिर भी हार गए। हारे तो ना। और अब हर रोज कह रहे हैं कि आप हमेशा है नहीं, आप हमेशा नहीं रहेंगे, आप हमेशा का तो मुझे मालूम नहीं साहब। मैं 61 का हुआ हूं। 14 से 30 साल तक भारतीय जनता पार्टी की ही सरकार रहने वाली है। मैं चिदंबरम साहब को कहना चाहता हूं, आप डाल दो, भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार में थी। 30 साल तक भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार रहेगी। मान्यवर, मैं 2015 में बोला था हमारी उड़ीसा कार्यकारिणी में, भुवनेश्वर कार्यकारिणी में। अब ये 5 साल गिन लो तो 15 तो हो ही गए और 15 भी हो जाएंगे। मान्यवर, भारतीय सेना के लिए कभी भी इन्होंने तैयारियां नहीं की। चीन के कई जवानों ने चीन की लड़ाई के बाद लिखा, हमारे पास बंदूक छोड़िए, कारतूस छोड़िए, नमक, चीनी और माचिस भी उपलब्ध नहीं थी। घनघोर ठंड में पहनने के लिए हमारे लिए ठंड के कपड़े भी नहीं थे। मान्यवर, आज वही सेना ब्रह्मोस से लैस है। आकाश उनके मिसाइलों को तोड़ देता है मान्यवर। और पाकिस्तान की पूरी एयर डिफेंस सिस्टम हमारी सेना आधे घंटे में उसको मलबे में बदल कर रख देती है मान्यवर। ये नरेंद्र मोदी के शासन में, मोदी जी के शासन में 11 साल में परिवर्तन। गोली नहीं बना पाते। मैं बाद में बताता हूं। लाखों करोड़ों का सामान हम बना रहे हैं, विदेश में भेज रहे हैं, एक्सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं। हमारी सेना का काफी सारा कई सारी चीजें हमने ब्लैकलिस्ट कर दी, इंपोर्ट नहीं कर सकते। और R&D के लिए एक बहुत बड़ा इकोसिस्टम बनाने का काम देश के प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी ने किया है। सेना और पूरे देश को मोदी जी की ये पहल पर, आत्मनिर्भर भारत के गर्व पर और हमारे सेना के जवानों का हथियार उनको ऐसा देना चाहिए, इस बात की चिंता पर देश और सेना मोदी जी पर गर्व कर सकती है। मान्यवर, हमने जो नमक, चीनी और माचिस नहीं थी, ऐसी सेना से 11 साल में 22 मिनट में ही आतंकवादियों का काम तमाम कर देने वाली, तकनीक से सज्ज, वीर, सटीक इंफॉर्मेशन वाली और बताए हुए लक्ष्यों को पूरा करने वाली सेना का मान्यवर निर्माण किया है। मान्यवर, ये हमला कल्पना कर लीजिए कांग्रेस के राज में हुआ होता तो क्या होता। अभी तो भाजपा सरकार है, एनडीए सरकार है, मोदी जी प्रधानमंत्री है। तीनों ने क्लीन चिट देने में 100 दिन लगा दिए। अगर कांग्रेस की सरकार होती तो पाकिस्तान को तुरंत क्लीन चिट मिल जाएगा। रक्षा मंत्रालय की जगह विदेश मंत्रालय काम करता। रातों रात जेरॉक्स मशीनों पर डोजियर तैयार होते, डोजियर वहां भेजते थे और फिर चर्चा करते शर्म अल शेख में, और कुछ नहीं करते साहब। और ये हमें सवाल पूछ रहे, कोई अधिकार नहीं है कांग्रेस पार्टी को, भारतीय जनता पार्टी को आतंकवाद के बारे में सवाल पूछने का। इस देश के अंदर आतंकवाद फैला, पनपा, बढ़ा, तो इसका एकमात्र कारण कांग्रेस की सरकारों की लचर और तुष्टीकरण से युक्त वोट बैंक की राजनीति रही है। और आज हमारा सौभाग्य है कि एक ऐसा नेतृत्व है जो ब्रह्मोस मिसाइल्स भेजता है, डोजियर नहीं भेजता है मान्यवर। और नेतृत्व सम्मानीय मान्यवर, संघर्ष विराम के लिए भी कई सारे कह रहे हैं। मैंने कल सुना रहा, पीओके क्यों नहीं लेंगे, इतना उछल उछल कर बोलते थे। और यहाँ पर काफी विद्वान लोग बैठे हैं, इनको कुछ संसद की मर्यादा, संसद में बात करने का तरीका, मतलब वास्तविक चीजें बोलने की पद्धति कुछ नहीं सिखाते मान्यवर। मैं आज पूरे देश के सामने बात करना चाहता हूं मान्यवर, ऑपरेशन सिंदूर युद्ध नहीं था। यूएन चार्टर के अनुच्छेद 51 के चैप्टर 7 के तहत हमने आत्मरक्षा के लिए बल प्रयोग का जो हमारा अधिकार है उसको उपयोग किया था। 22 अप्रैल को पहलगाम में आतंकवादियों ने जो हमला किया, हमारे निहत्थे नागरिकों को मारा और इसके जवाब में आतंकवादियों की पूरी इकोसिस्टम तोड़ने का हमारा अधिकार है। जो विश्व के सभी देशों ने हमारे अधिकारों को स्वीकारा है, वो अधिकार का हमने उपयोग किया था। और जब पाकिस्तान ने ही कहा कि हमें संघर्ष नहीं करना है, तब हमने इसको स्वीकारा। और कहते थे, मैं बाद में बताऊंगा मान्यवर, वो हमें कहने लगे कि भाई क्यों करा, ये ले लेते वो ले लेते। मैं बाद में जब आपके समय में जो घोषित युद्ध हुए, ये तो घोषित युद्ध नहीं था मान्यवर, मगर घोषित युद्ध हुए कांग्रेस के समय में, इसमें आपने क्या किया है वो बाद में मैं मान्यवर बताता हूं। उसके पहले मैं आतंकवाद के परिदृश्य पर, जम्मू कश्मीर का आतंकवाद का परिदृश्य और देश का परिदृश्य, इस पर बताना चाहता हूं। मान्यवर, कांग्रेस देश की सबसे पुरानी पार्टी है और सबसे ज्यादा शासन भी कांग्रेस और उनके साथियों ने देश पर किया है। उनके समय में हमारे प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी को 3 नासूर मिले आंतरिक सुरक्षा की दृष्टि से। पहले कश्मीर का आतंकवाद, नॉर्थ ईस्ट की इंसर्जेंसी और वामपंथी उग्रवाद नक्सलवाद, ये 3 नासूर मिले। और 30 से 40 वर्ष तक ये नासूर भारत की धरती को रक्त रंजित करते रहे। न जाने कितने लाल हमारे सेना के, सीआरपीएफ के, बीएसएफ के, सीआईएसएफ के मारे जाते रहे, शहीद पर शहीद। न जाने कितने निर्दोष किसान, न जाने कितने निर्दोष नागरिक आतंकवाद, इंसर्जेंसी और वामपंथी उग्रवाद की भेंट चढ़े, मगर कुछ नहीं हुआ। आज मैं कहना चाहता हूं मान्यवर, कश्मीर के उग्रवाद के बारे में बाद में आता हूं। नॉर्थ ईस्ट इंसर्जेंसी और वामपंथी उग्रवाद दोनों क्षेत्र में हिंसा में 75% की कमी लाने का काम नरेंद्र मोदी। मैं इस पर बहुत ज्यादा बोलना नहीं चाहता क्योंकि आज ये विषय नहीं, परंतु कश्मीर के अंदर जो आतंकवाद, वो मैं इस पर जरूर बोलना चाहता हूं। मान्यवर, इसका कारण क्या था? इसके कारण के मूल में जाना चाहिए। जब से कश्मीर का सृजन हुआ, धारा 370 बनाई गई। किसने बनाई? कांग्रेस पार्टी ने बनाई। इसका समर्थन और इतने लंबे समय तक किसने चला? कांग्रेस ने चला है। मान्यवर, इसका स्वरूप क्या था? धारा 370 और 35 से क्या कहते? कश्मीर का एक अलग ध्वज होगा, कश्मीर का एक अलग संविधान होगा और 5 अगस्त 2019 तक ये अलग ध्वज और अलग संविधान चलते रहे। हमारी पार्टी के पहले राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष श्यामा प्रसाद मुखर्जी ने इस धारा 370 के लिए अपना बलिदान देने का काम किया, उनकी हत्या कर दी। और क्या हुआ? इससे हमेशा अलगाववाद को पोषण मिलता है कि हम भारत के बाकी राज्यों जैसे नहीं है, हमें कुछ और मिल सकता है, हमारा तो संविधान अलग है, हमारा राष्ट्रध्वज अलग है। तो हर युवाओं को बरगाले, उनको उकसाने का मौका हमने पाकिस्तान, और कश्मीर के अंदर पहले अलगाववाद की बात हुई, फिर आजादी की बात हुई और वो ही आतंकवाद का मूल बना मान्यवर। और इसके बाद धार्मिक कट्टरता बढ़ाने वाले सारे संगठन इनकी तुष्टीकरण की नीति के कारण चलते रहे मान्यवर। जमायत-ए-इस्लामी, कई सारे संगठन जो बच्चों में, युवाओं में, किशोरों में धार्मिक कट्टरता बढ़ाते रहे, अलगाववाद बढ़ाते रहे, चलने दिया, चलने दिया, चलने दिया। बैन लगाएंगे तो हमारी वोट बैंक नाराज हो जाएगी। मान्यवर, इसके साथ साथ पाकिस्तान ने टेरर ग्रुप बनाए और ये टेरर ग्रुप के प्रवक्ता, इसका नाम है हुर्रियत कॉन्फ्रेंस। हर टेरर ग्रुप ने अपना एक ग्रुप, सिविलियन ग्रुप बनाया, इसके साथ चर्चा करते रहे और उनके परिणाम स्वरूप यहां आतंकवाद बढ़ता गया। मान्यवर, मैं आज स्वर्गीय शम्मी कपूर को भी कोट करना चाहता हूं। शम्मी कपूर जी, मैं पार्टी का अध्यक्ष था तब मिलने आए। उन्होंने कहा, अमित भाई, मेरा जब गोल्डन पीरियड था, मेरा साल का 30% टाइम कश्मीर में जाता था, इतना शूटिंग होता था कश्मीर, और मैं वहां के लोगों को मिला हूं। प्रोग्रेसिव सोसाइटी थी, महिलाएं प्रोग्रेसिव थी, धर्मनिरपेक्ष बात करते थे, सूफी संतों की बात करते थे, वहां पर कश्मीरी पंडित भी मिलते थे। आज मैं देख रहा हूं कि वो बच्चियां पथराव कर रही है। क्या हो गया, किसने बिगाड़ा? तब मैं इसके नीचे गया था, तब मालूम पड़ा कि ये जमात इस्लामी ने पूरी शिक्षा, प्राथमिक शिक्षा पर कब्जा जमा कर रखा था और बच्चों के दिलो दिमाग के अंदर जहर घोलना शुरू किया। तब जाकर स्थिति हुई। मगर कोई भी कभी भी ये कांग्रेस इसके मूल में नहीं गई और मान्यवर धीरे धीरे ये बढ़ता गया। मान्यवर नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने तय किया कि ऐसा नहीं चल सकता और 5 अगस्त 2019 को यही ऐतिहासिक सदन में धारा 370 और 35 को समाप्त, और उसके बाद शुरू हुआ टेररिज्म को फैलाने वाले, अलगाववाद फैलाने वाले टेररिस्ट और इनकी इकोसिस्टम संपूर्ण सफाई का एक युग शुरू हुआ। मान्यवर, धारा 370 35 से हटाए गए, जीरो टेरर प्लान बना, एरिया डोमिनेशन की योजनाएं बनी, कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग की योजनाएं बनी, मल्टी लेवल डिप्लॉयमेंट लगाया गया, तकनीक का उपयोग बढ़ाया गया, जेल प्रबंधन बढ़ाया गया, ड्रोन रोधी सिस्टम और गन तैनात किए गए। मान्यवर, हम सब ने देखा, देश की जनता ने देखा, कई आतंकवादी मारे गए, 10-10 हजार के जनाजे निकले। मान्यवर, हमने कठोर निर्णय लिया, आतंक में लिप्त किसी भी व्यक्ति का जनाजा नहीं निकलेगा, जहां मरेंगे वही दफना दिया। और मान्यवर, इस वक्त कांग्रेस पार्टी ने विरोध किया, फारूक अब्दुल्ला जी की पार्टी ने विरोध किया, आतंकी समर्थन को चूर चूर कर नौकरियों से निकाला गया, पासपोर्ट और गवर्नमेंट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट के हेतु इनको अघोषित किया गया। 75 पाकिस्तानी समर्थक सरकारी कर्मचारियों को ड्यू लीगल प्रोसेस से बर्खास्त करा दिया गया। बार काउंसिल सस्पेंड कर भारत के संविधान को मानने वाली बार काउंसिल प्रस्तावित की गई। यूएपीए अदालतों की स्थापना हुई और लगभग मई 22 से लेकर मई 25 तक 2267 प्रकरण यूएपीए के दर्ज हुए। इनकी पूरी टेरर फाइनेंस की इकोसिस्टम को ध्वंस किया। एनआईए और ईडी ने बहुत अच्छी कार्रवाई की, कई एसओपी बनाई गई और 347 संपत्तियों को जब्त कर दिया। एक और जमात इस्लामी और ऐसे संगठनों को हमने बंद करने का काम किया और दूसरी ओर मान्यवर इनकी इकोसिस्टम को भी हमने समाप्त कर दिया। मैं आज इस सदन के रिकॉर्ड के लिए बैन किए हुए संगठनों का लिस्ट पढ़ना चाहता हूं। द रेजिस्टेंस फ्रंट टीआरएफ, जिसने घटना करी थी, पीपल्स एंटी फासिस्ट फ्रंट, तहरीक उल मुजाहिदीन, जमात उल मुजाहिदीन, जम्मू कश्मीर गजनवी फोर्स, खलिस्तान टाइगर फोर्स, हिब्ज उल तहरीर, जमायत इस्लामी, जम्मू कश्मीर लिबरेशन फ्रंट, जम्मू कश्मीर डेमोक्रेटिक फ्रीडम पार्टी, मुस्लिम लीग जम्मू कश्मीर, तहरीक हुर्रियत, मुस्लिम कॉन्फ्रेंस सुमजी ग्रुप, जम्मू कश्मीर नेशनल फ्रंट, जम्मू कश्मीर पीपल फ्रंट लीग, जम्मू कश्मीर पीपल्स लीग, जम्मू कश्मीर इत्तिदाहुद मुसलमान अवामी एक्शन कमेटी और इसके साथ साथ सिख फॉर जस्टिस और पीएफआई को भी हमने बैन कर दिया। और मान्यवर, परिणाम क्या हुआ? परिणाम ये हुआ 2010 में 10 से 15 की एवरेज ऑर्गेनाइज्ड टॉन पिल्टिंग, हमने भी दृश्य देखे हुए जो समय कपूर ने चिंता की थी, छोटी छोटी बच्चियां पथराव करती थी, 2564 सालाना होती थी, 2564 पथराव की घटना होती। 2024 के बाद एक भी घटना नहीं हुई। ऑर्गेनाइज हड़ताल जिसका वो लोग ऐलान करते थे, पाकिस्तान के बैठे हुए हुर्रियत के आका सालाना 132 दिन घाटी बंद रखते थे। 3 साल से एक भी हड़ताल का ऐलान नहीं हुआ है, हिम्मत नहीं है। टॉन पेल्टिंग में नागरिकों की मृत्यु, 112 नागरिक मारे जाते थे, अब 0 मारे जाते हैं। सिक्योरिटी फोर्स का इंजर्ड, साल में 6235 सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस इंजर्ड होती थी, अब 0 हो गई। मान्यवर, इसके साथ साथ ये पूछ रहे थे, अभी वो शिवसेना की सदस्य भी पूछ रहे, क्या आतंकवाद समाप्त हो गया? इतनी गहरी जड़ें कांग्रेस की ने डाली है, समाप्त होने में बहुत देर लगेगी। हमारा प्रयास है जल्द से जल्द, परंतु मान्यवर आंकड़े में कहना चाहता हूं समाप्ति के कगार पर है। आपको पसंद नहीं आएगा मगर समाप्ति के कगार पर। पहले 2004 से 14 तक कुल घटनाएं 7217 हुई, 7217, 7217, और जून 15 से मई 25 तक 2150, 70% की कमी हो गई। मानव आतंकवादी घटनाओं में 70% कमी, नागरिकों की मृत्यु 1770 हुई थी, अब नागरिकों की मृत्यु 357 हुई। मान्यवर, 80% की कमी। और सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस 1060 मारे गए थे, अब 542 मारे गए हैं। मान्यवर, 49% की कमी। मान्यवर, इसके साथ साथ हमने कश्मीर के अंदर ढेर सारा काम किया है। मान्यवर, लगभग 59,000 करोड़ की 53 परियोजनाएं, चिनाब पर विश्व का सबसे बड़ा पुल बना, 8.5 किलोमीटर लंबी बनिहाल सुरंग बनी, उधमपुर, श्रीनगर, बारामूला तक रेल पहुंची, जोजिला सुरंग और बनिहाल सुरंग बने, रोजगारी का सृजन 63,000 लोगों का हुआ, जम्मू देश का पहला शहर बना जहां IIM, IIT और एम्स तीनों संस्थान वहां पर है। पहला शहर। लगभग ऐसी स्थिति कश्मीर में भी तीनों प्रोग्रेस पर है। 40,000 नौकरियां दी, विस्थापितों को प्रतिनिधित्व दिया, कश्मीर विस्थापित कश्मीर पंडितों के 2 सदस्यों का नामांकन करने का कानून लेकर आए, और सबसे बड़ी बात मान्यवर, हमने भारत के संविधान का झंडा कश्मीर में फहराने का काम। ये पूछते हैं क्या हुआ? पहले 3 परिवारों तक राजनीति, ना पंच था, ना सरपंच था, ना तहसील पंचायत थी, ना जिला पंचायत। आज जम्मू कश्मीर में 34,260 जनप्रतिनिधि चुने हुए जम्मू कश्मीर के नागरिकों की सेवा करें। मान्यवर, पहले चुनाव होते थे। मुझे एक सेना के रिटायर्ड जनरल मिले, बाद में मैं बताता हूं। उन्होंने कहा, अमित भाई, हमारा काम तो मुख्य सुरक्षा का नहीं था, वो तो भगवान भरोसे, सबसे बड़ा काम फर्जी वोटिंग करना। कराते थी प्रशासन, हम इनकार करते थे, कई लोगों को मेमो दिए गए, फिर भी हम अड़े रहते थे। 3%, 4% वोटिंग होती थी। आज नरेंद्र मोदी के शासन में जिला पंचायत के चुनाव में 98.3%। जनरल इलेक्शन में अब तक का सबसे ज्यादा वोटिंग आजादी से। ये बताता है वहां लोकतंत्र प्रस्थापित हो रहा है। मान्यवर, और 63% हुआ, और 1,000 करोड़ से रुपये से ज्यादा पैसा पंचायतों को सीधा देने का काम किया। मगर मान्यवर, क्यों हुआ? मैं आज पूरे सदन को बताना चाहता हूं। मैं अभी इस बात को कभी उजागर नहीं किया, मगर मुझे लगता है मौका भी है और दस्तूर भी है। जब से प्रधानमंत्री की कुर्सी संभाले, तब से उनके दिलो दिमाग पर कश्मीर की शांति का भूत था। अहरनीश सुधर। मान्यवर, 2015 में पार्टी का अध्यक्ष बना। मोदी जी ने मुझे जनरल सिन्हा के घर पर भेजा। जनरल सिन्हा जो कई साल तक कश्मीर में सेवा की, नॉर्थ ईस्ट में भी सेवा की, एनसीआर में रहते थे। मैं 3 दिन उनके घर पर बैठा, उन्होंने पूरी डिटेल बताई। फिर कश्मीर से जुड़े हुए 25 लोगों की अलग अलग सूची दी। इनके साथ मैंने घंटों चर्चा की थी और मोदी जी ने भी अनेक लोगों को बुलाकर चर्चा की। अगर मोदी जी करते हैं वो बताते नहीं, मगर मुझे कुछ तो मालूम है, क्योंकि काफी सरपंच को मिले थे, इनकी मिनट्स मेरे पास आई थी। पार्टी की दृष्टि से युवाओं से मिले थे, धार्मिक नेताओं से मिले थे, जम्मू के लोगों को मिले, घाटी के लोगों को मिले और नेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस के एमपीओ को भी मिले थे। और ढेर सारा मंथन 2014 से चलता था। वो मंथन अंत में कश्मीर के अंदर आज मैं विश्वास के साथ कह रहा हूं साहब, आतंकवाद समाप्ति के कगार पर है। आतंकवाद समाप्ति के कगार। एक जमाना था कि पाकिस्तान को आतंकवादी पाकिस्तान से भेजने ही नहीं पड़ते, हमारे कश्मीर के युवा हाथ में हथियार उठा लेते। मगर आज मैं 6 माह का रिकॉर्ड इस सदन को बताता हूं। 6 माह में आतंकवादी संगठनों में एक भी कश्मीरी युवा की भर्ती नहीं हुई है और जो मारे जा रहे हैं वो सारे पाकिस्तानी। क्योंकि जम्मू कश्मीर के अवाम ने मोदी जी की नीतियों को स्वीकारा है। पहले कभी नहीं हुआ सर कि आतंकवादी कोई बड़ा कृत्य करते थे, घाटी में इसका विरोध होता है। मैं आज घाटी की जनता को, जम्मू की जनता को बहुत बहुत साधुवाद देना चाहता हूं। एक भी गांव ऐसा नहीं था घाटी का जहां ये पहलगाम हमले का विरोध नहीं। और जब तिरंगा घर पर फहराने की बात होती, जिनके बच्चे आतंकवाद की भेंट चढ़ गए, वो माँ बाप भी तिरंगा फहराते हैं। और मान्यवर, आतंकवाद पर तो कांग्रेस को बोलने का अधिकार ही नहीं है। मान्यवर, मैं आज सदन के सामने डिटेल रखना चाहता हूं। अटल जी की सरकार ने निर्णय किया था कि आतंकवाद को समाप्त करें। काफी मंथन हुआ। मंथन के बाद तय हुआ कि मजबूत कानूनी संरचना खड़ी करनी पड़ेगी जिससे इनको सजा कराई। कानूनी संरचना खड़ी करने के लिए पोटा का कानून लाना, ये कांग्रेस पार्टी ने विरोध किया। मैं आज वो है नहीं, मगर पूछना चाहता हूं, पोटा का कानून का विरोध किसको बचाने के लिए किया था? खैर, उन्होंने तो विरोध किया, राज्यसभा में गिर गया। अटल जी का संकल्प मजबूत था, भाजपा का संकल्प मजबूत था। पोटा कानून संयुक्त सदन सेशन में पारित कर दिया गया और पोटा का कानून आया, इसका अमल शुरू। मान्यवर, ये कांग्रेस पार्टी ने इसके घोषणा पत्र में लिखा कि हम पहली कैबिनेट में पोटा का कानून रद्द कर देंगे। अब मैं तो कई बार ऐसा सोच ही नहीं सकता, तो मुझे लगा ये झूठ मूठ का वादा कर रहे। और मान्यवर देखिए, पहली कैबिनेट में ही इन्होंने पोटा के कानून को रद्द कर दिया। और कांग्रेस टेररिस्ट की बात करी, टेररिज्म की बात करी, आप तो उसका पोषण करने वाली पार्टी हो। मान्यवर, इसके बाद क्या हुआ? 2005 में रामलल्ला के टेंट पर हमला हुआ। मंदिर उस वक्त नहीं बना था। मुंबई लोकल ट्रेन में 7 धमाके हुए, 187 लोग मारे गए। डोडा में हमले हुए, 34 हिंदू मारे गए। हैदराबाद में धमाके हुए, 44 लोग मारे गए। 2005 रामलल्ला का टेंट, 2006 मुंबई ट्रेन, डोडा 2006, 2007 2 बम धमाके हैदराबाद में, 44 लोग मारे गए। 7 यूपी में धमाके हुए, 13 लोग मारे गए। 8 रामपुर सीआरपीएफ कैंप पर हमला हुआ, 2008 आर्मी के काफिले पर हमला हुआ, 10 नागरिक मारे गए। 2008 आतंकी हमला हुआ, 246 लोग मारे गए। 2008 जयपुर में 8 बम धमाके, 2008 अहमदाबाद में 21 बम धमाके, 2008 दिल्ली में 5 बम धमाके, 2010 जर्मन बेकरी बम धमाका, 2010 वाराणसी में बम धमाका, 2011 मुंबई में बम धमाका, 3 लोग मारे गए। एक भी वर्ष खाली नहीं गए मन में। और हमें पूछ रहे कि आपने क्या किया? 100 दिन तक पूछते ही रहे, कहां गए, क्या किया क्या किया क्या किया। अब मुझे बताओ भाई, 2005 से शुरू कर 2011 तक आपने क्या किया? कांग्रेस पार्टी ने क्या किया? कौन से कानून लाए? कौन से कदम उठाए? और कब जाकर पाकिस्तान पर सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक, एयर स्ट्राइक और ऑपरेशन सिंदूर का आपने प्रयोग किया? जवाब कांग्रेस पार्टी को, देश की जनता को देना पड़ेगा। मान्यवर, 54 जगह पे देश के अलग अलग हिस्सों में 609 नागरिक मारे गए, और मैं आज गर्व से देश के गृह मंत्री के नाते उच्च सदन में कहता हूं, मोदी जी के राज में पूरे देश में कश्मीर छोड़कर कहीं पर भी टेररिस्ट घटना नहीं, और कश्मीर में भी हुई, उड़ी में हुई, हमने सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक कर चेताया, पुलवामा में हुई, एयर स्ट्राइक कर और चेताया, अब नहीं सुधरते हैं। दुम टेढ़ी की टेढ़ी है, हम क्या कर सकते हैं? पहलगांव में करा मान्यवर, घर में घुसकर पटचड्डे उड़ाने का काम हमारी सेना। और मुझे तो कल सुबह ही किसी ने याद दिलाने के लिए, मेरी कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी से एक हमारी वरिष्ठ कार्यकर्ता है जिनकी उम्र 80 है, उन्होंने एक व्हाट्सएप भेजा था। उन्होंने कहा अमित जरूर बोलना। अब मैं इतनी वरिष्ठ कार्यकर्ता की भावना को टाल नहीं सकता मान्यवर। उन्होंने एक व्हाट्सएप में वीडियो भेजा जिनमें सोनिया गांधी जी के घर से दौड़ते दौड़ते सलमान खुर्शीद जी आंसुओं से लहस बाहर आते, बाहर मैनेज मीडिया खड़ा है, उसके सामने कहते हैं कि सोनिया जी पूरी रात सो नहीं पाती है, इनके आंसू देखकर मेरी आंख से आंसू दिख। ठीक है भाई, किस लिए आंसू बहाए? बाटला हाउस में वो पाकिस्तान प्रेरित आतंकवादी मारे गए, उसके लिए। अरे सोनिया जी, आंसू बहाना था तो बाटला हाउस एनकाउंटर में जो मोहन शर्मा शहीद हुआ, इसके लिए बहाते। आप किसको प्रोटेक्ट करते? वोट बैंक का एक खेल। मुझे पूछते रहे साहब, 90 दिन तक भाग गए, आप क्या कर रहे हो? 25 दिन हो गए, 35 दिन हो गए, 40 दिन हो गए, सिंदूर इसका जवाब नहीं, आतंकवादी कहां गए? चलो भाई, ये तो भाजपा सरकार है, सेना ने ठोक दिया, सीआरपीएफ ने ठोक दिया, हो गया हमारा काम। अब मैं पूछना चाहता हूं, दाऊद इब्राहिम जिसने मुंबई में सीरियल धमाके गए, किसके राज में भागे मान्यवर? कांग्रेस के राज में। सैयद सलाउद्दीन किसके राज में भागा? कांग्रेस के राज में। टाइगर मेमन किसके राज में भागा? कांग्रेस के। अनीस इब्राहिम किसके राज में भागा? रियाज भटकल किसके राज में भागा? कांग्रेस। इकबाल भटकर किसके राज में भागा? मिर्जा सादाब किसके राज में भागे? और इसका हिसाब कौन देगा? उनको मालूम था देना पड़ेगा साहब, इसलिए बहिष्कार करते। वो स्वयं भागे, आतंकवादियों को भगाया और वो भी भाग गए। और हमने मान्यवर 11 साल में यूएपीए में 2019 में अमेंडमेंट किया। इसके तहत, अमेंडमेंट के तहत 57 लोगों को आतंकवादी घोषित किया है। एनआईए का अमेंडमेंट किया, देश के बाहर जांच करने के हमने अधिकार लिए। एनएसए का हमने सख्त उपयोग किया, 370 को बैन किया, निरस्त कर दिया, पीएफआई को बैन किया, मैक को मजबूत किया, आईसीजेएस का हमने स्थापना किया, नफीस का स्थापना किया, पीएमएलए से टेरर फाइनेंसिंग को रोक दिया और नेट ग्रिड से माध्यम से पूरे देश के आतंकी संगठनों को एक कंप्यूटर की क्लिक पर लाकर रख दिया। मान्यवर, हमने पूरी इकोसिस्टम तैयार की। और मान्यवर, ये जो कह रहे हैं, कल पूछ रहे थे कैसे आते हैं, मान्यवर मैं फिर से कहना चाहता हूं कि इतनी कठिन सरहद, कई जगह सुरंगें बनाते हैं और बना सकते हैं मान्यवर। इसको रोकने के हम तकनीकी उपाय कर रहे हैं, कुछ समय में ही हो जाएगा। मगर कुछ नाले ऐसे हैं मान्यवर, वहां इतना बहाव होता है, वहां कोई चौकी नहीं लग सकती, चौकी बह जाएगी। वो घुस रहे हैं, मगर उन्होंने क्या स्टैंड लिया था? राहुल गांधी ने कहा, जब 2011 में हमला हुआ, उन्होंने कहा सभी आतंकी हमलों को रोकना संभव नहीं है। जवाहरलाल नेहरू ने कहा घुसपैठियों को कोई रोक ही नहीं सकता। मैं मानता हूं कि अभी भी पाकिस्तान कुछ आतंकी हमले कर पा रहा है, अभी भी कुछ घुसपैठ होती है, काफी कम हुआ है मान्यवर। मैं जिम्मेदारी के साथ बोलने वाला आदमी, देश की जनता सुन रही है, काफी कुछ कम हुआ है, मगर हम कभी ऐसे हथियार नहीं डालते। मैं आज सदन के सामने कहना चाहता हूं, घुसपैठ और आतंकवादी घटनाओं को समाप्त करने के लिए नरेंद्र मोदी सरकार कृत निश्चयी दृढ़ता के साथ हमारा। मान्यवर, कल राहुल गांधी जी का मैंने स्टेटमेंट सुना, चीन के लिए प्रधानमंत्री क्यों नहीं बोलते, चीन के लिए नहीं बोलते, चीन के लिए नहीं बोलते। अब ये उनके सीनियर लोग हैं, उनका कोई ट्यूशन व्यूशन भी नहीं रखते। मान्यवर, कैसे बोलना चाहिए, क्या बोलना चाहिए, कुछ बोलते ही रहते। मगर आपने जब चीन की लड़ाई समाप्त हुई तब क्या किया? चीन की लड़ाई समाप्त हुई तब हमारा 38,000 वर्ग किलोमीटर हिस्सा चीन को अक्साई चीन का देने का काम कांग्रेस पार्टी और आपके नाना जवाहरलाल नेहरू ने किया। मान्यवर, 1955 में देश में बहुत कम लोग जानते, और ये पूछ रहे हैं कि कल मुझे कहने लगे झूठ बोल रहे हैं, मैं आज चीज भी लेकर आया। मैं सिलेक्टेड वर्क्स ऑफ जवाहरलाल नेहरू सीरीज वॉल्यूम 29 पृष्ठ 231 पढ़ रहा हूं, जो नेहरू जी ने स्वयं संकलन करा है। इसके लेखक जवाहरलाल नेहरू स्वयं है। अनौपचारिक रूप से संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका की ओर से सुझाव दिया गया कि चीन को संयुक्त राष्ट्र से तो संबंध किया जाए, यूएन में उसको मेंबरशिप दी जाए, परंतु उसको सुरक्षा परिषद में नहीं और उसकी जगह भारत को देना चाहिए। साहब, कोई भी देश का प्रधानमंत्री होता, धन्यवाद करता और भारत सुरक्षा परिषद में मेंबर बन जाता। आज मोदी जी जो प्रयास करते थे, करने की जरूरत भी नहीं पड़ती, हमारे पास भी वीटो होता। परंतु इन्होंने क्या कहा, हम स्वीकार नहीं कर सकते। चीन जैसे महान देश को सुरक्षा परिषद में नहीं रखते हैं तो सुरक्षा परिषद के मायने ही नहीं रहते। ये मान्यवर कांग्रेस का चरित्र कल हमें सवाल पूछे थे, और चलो नाना तो बहुत दूर की बात है। इन्होंने मान्यवर चीन के बारे में राजीव गांधी फाउंडेशन, जिसकी चेयरपर्सन उनकी माताजी थी, उससे एमओयू किया, चीन से पैसा लिया, हमने एफसीआरए का लाइसेंस यही बिना पर कानूनी तरीके से राजीव गांधी फाउंडेशन का एफसीआरए का लाइसेंस कैंसिल कर दिया। क्या राहुल गांधी देश की जनता को एक प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करके बता सकते हैं कि चीन के साथ क्या एमओयू हुआ? मान्यवर, हम जब हमारे सेनानी चीन की सेना के आंखों में आंख डालकर डोकलाम में सीना चौड़ा कर कर खड़े थे, तब ये चीन के राजदूत के साथ गुपचुप मीटिंग स्वयं राहुल गांधी ये तो पीढ़ियों से चीन प्रेम चला रहा है। हिंदी चीनी भाई भाई से शुरू हुआ, सोनिया गांधी के राजीव गांधी फाउंडेशन से गुजरता हुआ चीन के राजदूत की मीटिंग तक आया। मान्यवर, और ये हमें कह रहे हैं कि आपने चीन का नाम नहीं दिया। अरे भाई, जब देना है तब देंगे। और हमारे विदेश मंत्री ने बहुत मजबूती के साथ इसका जवाब दिया। हर चीज प्रधानमंत्री को बोलने की जरूरत नहीं है, मगर आप देश की जनता को बताओ जरा, क्या एमओयू हुआ था, कितना पैसा लिया गया, चीन के राजदूत के साथ युद्ध की स्थिति में कैसे बात कर सकते हो? और आप प्रतिपक्ष के नेता हो, 38,000 स्क्वायर किलोमीटर भूमि चली गई, और साहब इरिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी देखे, कहते हैं वहां घास का तिनका भी नहीं उगता। अब नेहरू जी का सर मेरे जैसा था सर, तो हमारे महावीर त्यागी थे, उन्होंने कहा कि साहब आपके सर पर भी एक बाल नहीं है, क्या इसको चीन भेज दे? क्या रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, कितने इरिस्पॉन्सिबल जवाब हो। और अभी संधि की बात करें मान्यवर, मैं 71 के युद्ध में हमारा विजय हुआ। इंदिरा जी प्रधानमंत्री थी, बहुत अच्छा काम हुआ, विजय हुआ। 93,000 पाकिस्तान के सैनिक युद्धबंदी थे। 93,000 पाकिस्तानी सैनिकों को शिमला समझौते में लौटा दिया। पाक ऑक्यूपाई कश्मीर नहीं मांगा। अगर उस वक्त इंदिरा गांधी, इस देश की दिवंगत प्रधानमंत्री जी, पाक ऑक्यूपाई कश्मीर लिखवा लेती तो आज आतंकवाद देश में आ ही नहीं सकता था मान्यवर। पाक ऑक्यूपाई कश्मीर भी आ जाता मान्यवर। इसके साथ साथ हमारा 15,000 वर्ग किलोमीटर क्षेत्र हमारे कब्जे में था पाकिस्तान, वो भी दे दिया। पाकिस्तान के 93,000 युद्धबंदियों को दे दिया। हमारे सिर्फ 54 पकड़े गए थे, वो वापिस नहीं आए। आज भी इनके परिवारजन उनकी राह देख रहे। मान्यवर, क्या संवेदनशीलता है, क्या समझौता किया आपने। और साहब, जनरल मानेक साहब, जिनको 71 युद्ध का आर्किटेक्ट कहा जाता है, उन्होंने एक इंटरव्यू में कहा था, जनरल मानेक साहब के इंटरव्यू में कहते हैं, शिमला में भुट्टो ने भारत के नेतृत्व को मूर्ख बनाया। वो इंटरव्यू अंग्रेजी में, इसलिए मैं कोट अनकोट पढ़ा था। आई टोल्ड हर, इनटू ब्रैकेट उन्होंने छापा है इंदिरा गांधी, दैट आई टोल्ड हर दैट ही, इनटू ब्रैकेट भुट्टो, आई टोल्ड हर दैट ही हैज मेड मंकी आउट ऑफ यू। और ये हमें पूछ रहे संधि क्या, हमने तो युद्ध ही घोषित नहीं करा था, संधि किससे की हुई। हमारा एक लिमिटेड एग्रेशन था, टेररिज्म पर हमारा हमला था, और हमारे आत्मरक्षा के अधिकार का उपयोग करते हुए, और ये हमें पूछ रहे। चिंता मत करो राहुल गांधी, पाक ऑक्यूपाई कश्मीर की चिंता है ना, भारतीय जनता पार्टी ही ला देगी पाक ऑक्यूपाई। आप नहीं ला पाए, कांग्रेस पार्टी नहीं ला पाई, हमें लाए। और मान्यवर, पाक ऑक्यूपाई कश्मीर छोड़िए, पाकिस्तान की रचना ही कांग्रेस पार्टी ने की थी। मैं कम से कम इतना तो जिम्मेदारी के साथ कह सकता, मैं उस वक्त निर्णायक स्थिति में होता तो भारत माता के टुकड़े कभी सिग्नेचर नहीं करता। उम्र हो गई थी, जल्दी थी, प्रधानमंत्री बनना था, देश के टुकड़े टुकड़े कर, आज तक देश पछता है। मान्यवर, आतंकवाद के मुद्दों पर अंतरराष्ट्रीय मंचों में हमारी देश की फजीहत कर, मुंबई अटैक के बाद शर्म अल शेख सम्मेलन हुआ, जिसको पूरी दुनिया की डिप्लोमेसी में बलूचिस्तान ब्लंडर के नाम से जानते हैं। उसमें प्रस्ताव किया कि दोनों देश आतंकवाद के शिकार हैं। अब भला दुनिया में कोई पाकिस्तान को आतंकवाद का शिकार कह सकता है क्या? लोग हमारे मरे, जवान हमारे मरे, और आपने उनको पाकिस्तान को सर्टिफिकेट दे दिया मान्यवर। और भारत पाकिस्तान के आधिकारिक बयान में भी बलूचिस्तान का जिक्र किया। इनका आंतरिक मामला था, हमारा कोई लेन देन नहीं है। बलूचिस्तान में जो घटनाएं हो रही, मनमोहन सिंह स्वीकार कर आए, और उसके बाद में उन्होंने कहा कि टेरर की घटना और वार्ता, उसके बीच में कोई रिलेशनशिप। भगवान भला करे, देश की जनता का नरेंद्र मोदी को प्रधानमंत्री बनाया, वो चीज को नरेंद्र मोदी ने समाप्त कर दी। जब तक टेररिज्म नहीं रुकता है, वार्ता नहीं हो सकती। मान्यवर, आज ये लोग जो बोल रहे हैं, विदेश नीति पर सवाल उठा रहे हैं, मैं उनको कहना चाहता हूं कि मोदी जी को G20 कई सारे देशों को मिला है। राजीव गांधी फाउंडेशन में एक स्टडी करा दो, हर देश में हुआ G20 और भारत में हुआ G20। हर देश की राजधानी में जाता है। मोदी जी G20 को हर राज्य में ले गए। हमारी संस्कृति, हमारी क्षमताएं, हमारा पावर, हमारा लोकतंत्र पूरी दुनिया के सामने रखने का काम नरेंद्र मोदी ने किया, और पूरी दुनिया स्वीकार कर रही है कि पूरे अब तक के G20 सम्मेलन में सबसे सफल G20 सम्मेलन है। और मान्यवर, इसीलिए पूरी दुनिया में कई सारे राष्ट्राध्यक्ष है। मान्यवर, किसी भी देश के राष्ट्राध्यक्ष को 27 देशों का सर्वोच्च नागरिक सम्मान, और ये विदेश नीति की बात है, 27 देश अपने सर्वोच्च नागरिक सम्मान से नरेंद्र मोदी को सम्मानित करते हैं। भाई साहब, ये सम्मान नरेंद्र मोदी जी का नहीं है, भारत के प्रधानमंत्री का है, भारत की 140 मोदी जी ने देश को सम्मान दिला है, देश की 140 करोड़ जनता को गौरवान्वित किया है। तो मोदी जी का नेतृत्व जो है भावुक नहीं है। भावुक नेतृत्व होता है वो रोने भी लगता है, कई बार शकम भी हो जाता है। मोदी जी का नेतृत्व संवेदनशील भी है, निर्णायक भी है और दृढ़ भी है। मैंने देखा है कोरोना 370 ऑपरेशन सिंदूर, ये सारा छोड़ दो। कोरोना में मैंने देखा है इससे बड़ी आफत इस सहस्त्राब्दी में भारत पर नहीं आई। अड़ीग होकर अपने रास्ते पर चलते रहे, और जब कोरोना समाप्त हुआ पूरी दुनिया ने कहा सबसे अच्छा प्रबंधन भारत ने किया। और उसका कारण जब ढूंढा गया, मैं भी स्टडी करने वाले कुछ लोगों को मिला था, मैंने जब कारण पूछा गया, स्टडी किया गया, तो सबने कहा कि पूरे विश्व में कोरोना के सामने सरकारें लड़ती थी, हमारे यहाँ प्रधानमंत्री, भारत सरकार, राज्य सरकार और 140 करोड़ लोग एक साथ कोरोना के सामने लड़ते थे। मजाक उड़ाते, घंटी बजाने से कोरोना चला जाएगा, दिया जलाने से चला जाएगा, कर्फ्यू करने से अपने आप चला जाएगा। उनको मालूम नहीं था, जनता के मन में जागरूकता लाते थे। और जब, मुझे तो ठीक याद है, मोदी जी ने टीम गठित की टीका बनाने के लिए, तब जयराम रमेश जी, नाम मत लीजिए, रिकॉर्ड पर मत लीजिएगा, तब कांग्रेस वाले इनका मजाक करते थे कि भारत टीका बना लेगा। मान्यवर, सबसे पहले टीका बनाने वाले देशों में भारत है, और इसी के कारण हम बचे। मान्यवर, 11 साल में समग्र दुनिया ने भारत की क्षमता को स्वीकारा है। भारत 11वें नंबर से चौथी सबसे बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्था बना। जीडीपी हमारा 4.19 ट्रिलियन हो गया, $1 ट्रिलियन की डिजिटल अर्थव्यवस्था बनी। प्रति व्यक्ति आय, जयराम रमेश जी हमेशा पुस्तक पूछा करते हैं, निर्मला जी बताती भी नहीं है, 68,572 से बढ़कर 1,33,488। मान्यवर, राष्ट्रीय राजमार्ग का नेटवर्क 60% बढ़ा, 159 ऑपरेशनल एयरपोर्ट है। 31 लेकर मोदी जी ने इनिंग शुरू करा था, अभी समाप्त नहीं हुआ। 136 वंदे भारत ट्रेन है, 1500 ट्रेन अमृत स्टेशन योजना के तहत विकसित हो रहे हैं। 97% से अधिक भारतीय रेल का विद्युतीकरण हो चुका है। भारत दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा मोबाइल फोन उत्पादक देश बनने के कगार पर है। भारत तीसरा सबसे बड़ा स्टार्टअप इकोसिस्टम बन चुका है। मोदी सरकार में 118 यूनिकॉर्न बने। रक्षा क्षेत्र में हमारा उत्पादन 1.27 लाख करोड़ हुआ और निर्यात 21,000 करोड़ हुआ। विश्व का सबसे बड़ा पुल भारत में है, विश्व का सबसे लंबा पुल भारत में है। देश का सबसे लंबी अटल सेतु भारत में बनी। भारत का पहला वर्टिकल लिफ्ट रेल पुल मोदी जी के समय में हुआ और सबसे बड़ा NH भी मोदी जी के समय में बना। और सबसे बड़ी उपलब्धि, कई पीढ़ियों से गरीबी जिनको दस रही थी मान्यवर, 60 करोड़ लोगों को घर में बिजली, गैस, शौचालय, शुद्ध पीने का पानी, 5 किलो अनाज और 5 लाख तक का इलाज देने का काम। ये नहीं समझ रहे। आपकी जो इच्छा हो, मैं मान्यवर एनालिसिस के साथ इस सदन में जिम्मेदारी के पूर्वक कहना चाहता हूं, जब भी भारत की आजादी का इतिहास 25 साल के बाद शताब्दी के वर्ष लिखा जाएगा, ये मोदी एरा स्वर्ण अक्षरों से लिखा जाएगा, किसी ने सीखा। और मान्यवर, कई सारे चीजें जो भारत के स्वाभिमान से साथ होती है, हमारे इतिहास के साथ, हमारी संस्कृति के सम्मान के साथ, वो सारी चीजों को इन्होंने 75 साल तक लटका कर रखा। मैं आज एक लिस्ट पढ़ना चाहता हूं। अचीवमेंट जो हुए, आर्थिक विकास हुआ है, प्रजा का आत्मगौरव उड़ा है। आर्टिकल 370 को हमने हटा दिया, 3 तलाक समाप्त कर दिया, यूसीसी शुरू हो चुका है, राम मंदिर का निर्माण अयोध्या में रंग चंग के साथ हो गया, न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में मातृभाषा में शिक्षा पर हमने बल दिया, काशी, उज्जैन, शारदा पीठ, करतारपुर कॉरिडोर बनाए, राजपथ का नाम बदलकर कर्तव्य पथ रख दिया, योग को वैश्विक पहचान दिलाई, नया नौसिक सैनिक चिन्ह वीर छत्रपति शिवाजी महाराज के निशाने पर रखा, संसद के अंदर सेंगोल की स्थापना की, राष्ट्रीय युद्ध स्मारक का स्वदेशी निर्माण किया, अंडमान और निकोबार द्वीप समूह के नाम बदलकर सुभाष बाबू और परमवीर चक्र विजेता बने हुए हमारे सेनानियों पे साथ रखे। और इसके साथ साथ कई सारी उपलब्धियां ये एरा में हुई। माने और सबसे बड़ी उपलब्धि है 2047 में मुझे एक विदेशी पत्रकार ने कहा, मैं लंबा बैठा था, मैं उनकी थॉट प्रोसेस को जानना चाहता। अब मैं जो सुनना चाहता था तीसरे ही वाक्य में कि अब भारत को कोई रोक नहीं सकता। तो मैं उनको पूछा क्यों? उन्होंने कहा अब तक भारत ने अपना लक्ष्य ही तय नहीं किया था, कैसे अचीव करता। मैंने बोला अब क्या हुआ? कि अब मोदी जी ने तय कर दिया कि जब 100 साल का भारत होगा, आजादी के 100 साल होंगे, तब विश्व में हर एक क्षेत्र में हम नंबर 1 पर होंगे और महान और मान्यवर, मुझे मालूम है मोदी जी का भाषण, मोदी जी का संदेश आज 140 करोड़ भारतीयों का संकल्प बना हुआ है और मुझे विश्वास है 140 करोड़ भारतीयों पर और हमारे युवाओं पर। शायद हमें से काफी लोग 2047 में नहीं होंगे, परंतु 2047 में जो भी भारतीय होंगे वो देखेंगे कि विश्व में भारत नंबर 1 बन चुका है। मान्यवर, भारत को नंबर 1 बनना है तो हमारी बाहरी सुरक्षा और आंतरिक सुरक्षा बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। ऑपरेशन सिंदूर की चर्चा में मैं देश की जनता को कहना चाहता हूं, युद्ध होता है तो हमला वहां पर से भी होता है, यहाँ से पर से एक भी हमला ऐसा नहीं जाएगा जिसका जवाब दिया नहीं जाएगा और आतंकवाद को हम समाप्त कर रहेंगे। 31/3/26 को नक्सलवाद समाप्त हो जाएगा, इसमें किसी को शंका नहीं। और अंत में जिन जिन सदस्यों ने इसमें हिस्सा लिया है, बहुत सम्मान के साथ उनका धन्यवाद कर और फिर से एक बार ऑपरेशन महादेव में जिन्होंने हिस्सा लिया है वो सभी को पूरे सदन की ओर से और व्यक्तिगत मेरे रूप से बहुत बहुत साधुवाद देता
The House stands adjourned to meet at 11 a.m. on Thursday, the 31st July 2025.
Home Minister Amit Shah there giving a 1.5 hour response, a reply to conclude the debates on the Operation Sindoor, both in the Lok Sabha and now today in the Rajya Sabha. Multiple speakers from different parties, the ruling party, the opposition parties, they all spoke. And we had a robust debate in both houses of parliament over Monday and Tuesday in the Lok Sabha, over Tuesday and Wednesday in the Rajya Sabha. And finally, there is a sense that the people of this country now know in a greater degree and with a firmer footing as to what exactly happened between the 7th of May and the 10th of May, when India carried out Operation Sindoor, the 9 terror targets that were targeted, and then subsequently the escalation that happened between India and Pakistan, only for it to end on the 10th of May when the Pakistani DGMO called the Indian DGMO and asked for a ceasefire. All the facts of what happened in those 4 days have been laid out by multiple folks from the government, whether it's the Prime Minister yesterday in the Lok Sabha, today the Home Minister in the Rajya Sabha, and of course the opposition, as is the case, has asked some very robust questions of the Operation Sindoor, as well as, you know, some of the things that went on over those 4 days between the 7th of May and the 10th of May. But now, hopefully, that will be settled and put to rest as to how events panned out between those 4 momentous days, and finally how India managed to score a decisive military victory over Pakistan. But now we have another big story which we need to focus on, because it is going to have a huge impact on the markets when they open tomorrow morning. It's going to have an impact on the trade relationship. It's also going to impact on how the economy goes forth in the next few weeks and months. Now, US President Donald Trump has announced 25% tariffs on India. He's put out a Truth Social media post an hour or so ago where he has said that India will pay a penalty over and above whatever has been decided for its 25% for its trade with Russia, despite the ongoing war in Ukraine. He put out this post on Truth Social a couple of hours ago where Trump said that despite being friends, India and the United States have done relatively little business, and India, according to him, is one of the hardest places to do business because the tariff is so high. So what does this really mean? What does the 25% tariff on all Indian exports into the United States actually mean? A 25% tariff for India is just 1 percentage point lower than what the President of the United States had threatened back in April. At that time, India had been slapped with 10% base tariff plus another 16% reciprocal tariff that added up to 26%. Now what he's done is reduced it by just 1% to 25% on all imports from India going into the United States. Also significantly higher than the tariff rates that Trump has announced for other Asian countries, whether it is Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, Japan. All of these countries are being tariffed at anywhere between 15 to 20%. India will be tariffed at 25%. The European Union, with whom Trump reached a deal just a few days ago, faces 15% tariffs. Let's listen in to some reactions that have been coming in, and what may this really mean for India's long-standing trade relationship with the United States, whether it will have a knock-on effect on companies' profitabilities, particularly companies that are dependent on their export relationship with the US, as well as other markets abroad. How may this impact? All of this we will analyze threadbare. But first, I want to play out some reactions first.
This is definitely coming as a major setback for the Indian government and exporters. Till this evening, we were expecting a tariff in the range of 20 to 25%, and our exporters were coming around to accepting and absorbing this tariff. The view was that 25%, we will still be competitive compared to other economies such as Vietnam, Indonesia. But now, with the additional penalty that is being imposed by Donald Trump because of our energy purchases from Russia, because of the non-tariff barriers that India imposes and the large trade deficit, that could really hurt India. And there is uncertainty about the quantum of tariff. Is it going to be only 10% BRICS tariff? Or is there going to be an additional penalty over and above that because we have energy and defense ties with Russia? So this really makes things very difficult for Indian exporters. We've also seen how in the textile sector, the leather sector for that matter, American companies have been putting Indian orders on hold because of the tariff uncertainty. So that period of uncertainty could further continue. It is possible that Indian exporters, especially in textiles for that matter, or leather, would have to give greater discounts to American buyers in order to continue the relationship. There is still some hope that a bilateral trade agreement is still being negotiated. The deal is not off, it's still on the table. And somewhere down the line, within a few months, it will be agreed upon. That is the larger hope that exporters in India are working with. But the sense that we get from the Trump administration and US companies is the fact that Donald Trump is wanting a big headline announcement from India, which is not just about a tariff reduction from India, but announcements to the tune of hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. He would want India to make big commitments on purchasing energy. big commitments on purchasing US defense equipment, and generally investing and make in America. That seems to be missing at this point. Donald Trump feels that currently the India deal is missing ambition.
Before we go to our guests, and we'll be joined by very, very special guests, but I want to play out the sound bites of what Donald Trump said on board Air Force One as he was returning from Scotland back to America last night. And then also what Piyush Goyal, the Commerce Minister, said on Saturday in a press conference that was meant to address the India-UK FTA deal that had been signed. He also addressed a question on where the current negotiations are as India sees it between Washington and New Delhi.
Is the deal with India finalized?
No, it's not. India's been a good friend, but India has charged basically more tariffs than almost any other country. You know that, right? Over the years. But now I'm in charge, and you just can't do that.
भारत अब हमारे करार बड़े सोची समझी रणनीति के साथ करते हैं। यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स के साथ भी अच्छी बातचीत चल रही है और मुझे विश्वास है कि फॉल 2025 यानी अक्टूबर नवंबर 2025 जो समय सीमा माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी और यूएसए के राष्ट्रपति ट्रम्प साहब ने दोनों ने मिलके जो समय सीमा में बायलैटरल ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट करने का निर्णय लिया था उसमें हम एक अच्छा करार United States of America के साथ भी अवश्य करेंगे.
All right, I want to go across to our guests. A very special panel joining us tonight. Mohandas Pai is chairman of Aaron Capital. P.K. Basu, economist. Vivek Vadva, CEO of Ionix Biosciences. Shama Mohammed of the Congress Party joining us. Mr. Pai, let me start with you first. This must come as a bit of a disappointment because, for the longest time, India wanted to be the first country to snatch a deal with the United States. Now, we don't have a deal. Instead, we have 25% tariffs. What does it mean, though? Break it down for us. What does it mean for Indian exporters to the US? I know it's restricted to goods right now, but what does it mean for like leather exports, pharma exports, textiles, etc., going into the US? And particularly, given, other countries, Europe and Japan and Vietnam and Indonesia all managing to clinch a deal with Trump, India, on the other hand, holding out.
Look, we have to be clear about Trump's motive. Trump has no friends in the world. He doesn't care for international law, any international norms. He only cares for what he wants to do to America. He got $100 billion of revenues in the last quarter, June quarter, because of the tariffs. He signed an agreement with Japan whereby the Japanese will pay 15% for tariff for the luxury of selling goods to America. And in return, America can sell all the goods free of tariff to Japan, and Japan will invest 1 trillion, 2 trillion, whatever the number is, in the US. He got a deal with EU, whereby EU will pay 15% tariff for the honor of selling to the US, and EU will open up his market to the US, buy some $700 billion of oil, $500 million of investment, big numbers, which nobody knows how it will happen. So it's very clear, we can't expect anything less than 15% from Trump for the benefit of selling our goods there across the board. In return, he'll want zero tariff on American goods to India, and he doesn't care. India is not a very big player there. Maybe we export $100 billion. So if we have a tariff, maybe it'll cost us $15, $20 billion. And right now, that is the reality. We must understand that he doesn't care for friends. He doesn't care for norms. He doesn't care for anybody. He's very clear in his mind. And the writing has been there on the wall. Maybe we had false hopes that the US is our friend, Trump is our friend, but Trump is no friend to anybody. So let's be clear, let us be realistic. Now what we need to do is to look into detail to see when the tariff for 25% come, which industry will be hurt, how do we help those industries, etc. And maybe some of it will be passed on to the US consumer, some the companies have to absorb, and some they have to change the markets and to go. And I'm sure tomorrow in the markets open, there'll be analysts who will give industry by industry any likely impact, and we'll see an impact in the market. But the reality is very clear. The reality is very clear. It's time we accept the reality. We have to sign a trade agreement with EU because the UK agreement is a pretty good agreement. I hope the EU doesn't behave like the US. I'm sure they will not. But we have to sign a deal with them, look at the rest of the world, and negotiate with President Trump. But he's not going to come down below 15%. I think that's a red line for him. And we have to be careful what we open up. We agree to a lot of stuff. We're not agreeing to milk. We're not agreeing to genetically modified food and some other things.
Yeah.
So we have some red lines. So we have to be realistic and keep politics apart and negotiate, try to get the best deal.
Okay, let me ask Vivek Vadhwa on this. Vivek, you were here in India a few months ago. At that time, it was hoped that India would be perhaps one of the first countries to clinch a deal with the Trump administration. That has not come to pass. India is now being tariffed at 25%. Countries like Japan at 15%, the European Union at 15%, UK at 10%, some of the Asian countries at 19 and 20%. India's position has been that, look, we can't sell out our agricultural produce. We can't be seen as, going soft on some of the labor-intensive sectors. Ultimately, it was not to be. Now, the point is, India and the United States were supposed to be strategic partners. It was not just supposed to be a transactional relationship. But Mr. Trump doesn't seem to care much about it.
Zaka, I'm not surprised at all at what happened over here. In fact, if you had asked me, 3 months ago, I would have said exactly the same thing. What's going to happen here is that he's negotiating a deal. He's going to get very nasty. He's going to push it to the last moment. The fact that he tweeted it is indicative that they're very close to a deal. All right, so he's going to, he's put a lot of pressure on the Indian government right now. Everyone in India is panicking, as you can see from the conversation we're having. What's going to happen is that India will make a couple more concessions and the deal will get done and he'll declare victory, just like he did with Pakistan and Sindoor. He wants to take credit. So by being a bad guy right now and then saying, oh, everything is okay, you see what I did, I'm a hero. That's what this whole game is about. That's the Trump way of negotiating. Read out of the deal, read everything, watch everything he's done. I agree with Mohan that it'll probably be 15% tariffs because that seems to be his baseline. India can easily absorb that. And at the end of the day,
in the context of India, what does he want? You're saying he's being the bad guy now. Maybe he will, change course a couple of months from now. But what is it that he wants? What is the area that he's targeting that he wants India to lower tariffs or open up the sector, so on and so forth?
You want to know what I really believe? I think he just wants credit. He doesn't care about the details of the deal. He doesn't care about the economy. He wants to look good in front of his base. That's what this is all about. This posturing, these tweets. Just watch what happens over the next few days. The Indian government will cave in on a couple of demands. I don't think they're going to give in on agriculture or do anything unsensible, but they're going to cave in. And this will be good for India because India does need to reduce these British era, British Raj tariffs and structures and clean up its government. So this also gives the Modi government an excuse to remove some of the old regulations, some of the old tariffs, to open up the economy. I think this is going to end up being very good for India because it really is a kick in the butt to get moving and removing some of the stupid trade barriers that the country had. So that's a good thing. And at the end of the day, it'll be a win-win. Just watch. Be patient over here. This is the game.
Vivek, I'll come back to you. There's a conversation I want to have with you on this whole differential with China. But let me get Dr. Shama Mohammad and P.K. Basu into this conversation. Shama Mohammad, you heard both the previous speakers saying that, look, ultimately, this is just a temporary pause. Yes, there's 25% now, but ultimately, Trump is a deal maker. He will eventually come around, whatever it is that he wants, to get India to open up more sectors, reduce duties on other imported American items. Eventually, he will come around to a 10 to 15%, which is what he's levying on some of the partner countries of the United States. India will get the same thing. It's just about, staying the course, being patient.
So the goalpost keeps changing. So for Modi, it will come down to 15 now. I mean, if other South Asian countries could get it less, if the European Union countries could get it less, why not India? And China, he's still doing a deal with China. We thought China would have the highest, but he's still talking to China. And the sad thing is, Modi actually believed he would reduce the tariffs. See, because of that, when he said 30 times that I'm the one who caused who brought about the ceasefire between India and Pakistan, Modi ji was quiet. Not a single word. When Asim Munir was invited for lunch there, did we protest? I mean, the man is a terrorist who brought about the terrorist attack in India. Did we protest when Trump was inviting him for lunch? ADB Bank, World Bank, IMF giving huge loans to Pakistan. Did we protest? No, because Modi thought at the end, maybe he's going to reduce the tariff. He did the Howdy Modi thing. He thinks he's his great friend, but he doesn't understand how
But ma'am, no deal has been announced with Pakistan yet, and tomorrow, August 1st, is the deadline. So Pakistan could well be tariffed higher than 25%, where India is tariffed.
Are you Zaka hyphenating us with Pakistan?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying. I'm just stating facts.
I didn't talk about Pakistan. I spoke about other South Asian countries. I spoke about Europe. I spoke about the rest.
You spoke about Pakistan. Asim Munir is the army chief of Pakistan, not of Indonesia.
Saka, if you want to support Modi, I will leave the debate. You can go and support Modi.
I'm just telling you
I'm not going to do that.
I'm just telling you facts.
Let me tell you. So I'm not talking about Pakistan. What I'm trying to tell you is that he played all this. He said we got in the ceasefire when it's a bilateral issue.
So he got into ceasefire with Pakistan only, right? You're talking about Pakistan. That's what you're talking about.
Yes, but he kept saying this because he wanted a deal with America. Now, number two, most important, 2008, Indo-nuclear civil deal. How did that happen? You know that they brought about an amendment in the Constitution of the United States of America to get through this deal. That is what diplomacy is about. That's what Manmohan Singh had a relationship with at that time George Bush. No, Mohandas Pai, I know you support
constitutional amendment in America. Don't lie.
I did not interrupt you, so you have to shut your mouth.
Stop lying.
I did not interrupt. Zaka, I'm leaving the show because I know who he is. No.
Okay, one second, Mr. Pai. One second. I'll come back to you. But let Shama finish a point. I also have the first reaction. Dr. Mohammed, 1 second, please.
Why did he interrupt me? I did not interrupt any of
I agree. Fair point. But I have breaking news. Can I please report the breaking news to our viewers? I just want to bring our viewers up to speed. The first government reaction to the United States imposing 25% tariffs on India. The PIB, the Press Information Bureau, has put out a statement, and I want to read from it. The government has taken note of the statement by the U.S. President on bilateral trade. The government is studying its implications. India and the U.S. have been engaged in negotiations on concluding a fair, balanced, and mutually beneficial bilateral trade agreement over the last few months. We remain committed to that objective. The government attaches the utmost importance to protecting and promoting the welfare of our farmers, entrepreneurs, and MSMEs. The government will take all steps necessary to secure our national interest, as has been the case with other trade agreements, including the latest comprehensive economic trade agreement with the UK. This is the first government reaction to the 25% tariffs that have been imposed by the United States. Yes, Dr. Sharma. Okay, Mr. P.K. Basu is joining us. Yes, Mr. Basu.
I think it's important to understand that the United States is by far the world's largest market for exports. And we have, if you looked at the situation on the 2nd of April, the tariff imposed on India was lower than on most of our competitors. We were facing a 26% tariff. Vietnam was facing 36%. And most of our competitors, Bangladesh, over 40%, etc. So we had a relative advantage. We have had several months. From April, basically we've had almost 4 months to negotiate. And at the end of the 4 months, what has emerged is, I'm afraid, a catastrophic result. Right now, we are going to be paying a higher tariff than Vietnam, Indonesia, Japan, the European Union. We are going to be paying most likely higher tariffs than most of our competitors. And that is a very unfortunate outcome, because in my view, the most important thing here is we should just understand that relative to China, if we have a 10% tariff advantage for our textiles, garments, shoes, toys, we can massively gain market share. China's market share in these products is 8 or 9 times India's. If we gain 1/3 of China's market share, we can triple our exports of those products. And they are very, very labor intensive. They can generate thousands and thousands, millions of jobs.
Okay, that's a great point, Mr. Basu. I think that's a great point, because I think that was the principle of the tariffs.
The principle is simple. The fact is, we all know that Trump is an arbitrary person. He's a difficult negotiator, and he is a protectionist. This has been known. It's nothing new. 2 days away from the August 1st deadline, we are now faced with a 25% tariff plus a surcharge. Potentially,
yeah. So
it is
let me ask,
27.5%.
Mr. Pai, Mr. Pai, will we have a differential with China, or at 25% we don't have a differential, and therefore no particular advantage to Indian exports?
You know, Zaka, I do believe that ultimately for India it will settle at 15%. We need to open up some of our markets, like other gentlemen said, Ashok said. It will be good for us because we got unnecessary restrictions in many areas. Of course, we will stand firm on agriculture, milk, and some few items. And we must remember, we must tell President Trump we are buying 500 Boeing aircraft for the next few years. And the 500 Boeing aircrafts could be worth, I think, 50 billion, Ashok? 50 billion or 60 billion. That's a lot of money, right? We probably will buy more aircraft. We should tell you we'll buy 1,000 aircraft for the next 15 years, which anyway we'll buy. And they're all big numbers. So you'll have something to say. India agreed to buy 200 billion, some 300 billion of defense, 400 billion of oil, $1 trillion over the next few years. That's fine. They can grandstand. But you must see how to... See, he's not going to come below 15% to India. I don't think so. UK is a special case for many other reasons. He will have a red line. We will have a red line. We have to open up. We have some bargaining chips. And we have to move fast and accept it for what it is.
Okay, I'll give Mr. Wadhwa the last word, because ultimately, look, I think as far as India is concerned, the big concern was immigration, tech visas, and so on and so forth. But that seems to have been kept out of this. Will India be able to convince Trump that, look, as far as goods are concerned, we can negotiate, we can invest in buying American oil, American defense exports, etc., but reduce the duties to 15%? Mr. Wadhwa.
Yeah, Mohan, by the way, it's Vivek, not Ashok. But anyways, Zaka, I think the fact that Trump did this tweet is a very good sign. It means that we're getting close to the end of it. And at the end of the day, the Indian relationship is much greater than, tariffs. Indians are everywhere. I mean, even in his administration, Indians are guiding and doing all the right things. Beneath the surface, there's a lot of good happening. Yes, we can get political over here and try to blame Modi for it, but that's BS.
All right.
Just watch and see what happens over the next few days, next few weeks. I think that it's going to, end up being strong, and Trump is going to be very happy that he got a concession from India. He's going to take credit for things that have already been negotiated. And this is just a game that's being played. So let's relax over here and watch and see.
For now, let's see how the markets open tomorrow. For example,
there is a 25% tariff.
Okay, Mr. Basu, I'm completely out of time. We'll do this tomorrow as well. Let's see how the markets react tomorrow, because I suspect it may not be particularly positively. But we will see. I think this is going to be a long haul. It's going to be the next few weeks and days of negotiations with Donald Trump and the U.S. administration. But ultimately, I think India needs to sort of, on the one hand, hold its ground as far as agricultural products are concerned, and on the other, show some equanimity, show some ability to open up some of its other areas and other sectors. Thank you very much for tuning in. Rahul Shivshankar, right up next.
Co-presented by this.
Bangalore boss, IT capital.
Arey Mumbai, financial capital. Try Chennai, healthcare capital. SaaS capital, automobile capital.
All eyes on you.
How has he seen a doll?
Gotta have some spin, never blending, dripping like it's so clean.
Moto G96 5G.
All eyes on you.
Hello, Moto.
Machi, guess which Indian city has the most number of biryani shops? Hyderabad. No.
Chennai, bro. We got over 4,000 biryani shops.
All eyes.
How is he always winning?
Gotta have some spin, never blending, dripping like it's so clean.
Moto G96 5G.
All eyes on you.
Hello, Moto.
How many world champions does Mumbai have? Chennai's got 9, okay? In cricket, chess, carom, squash.
Play it your way.
Sarah, this is your space, play it your way.
Motorola Razr 60. Dangerously cool.
Hello, Moto.
Keep going. Go into uncharted territories. Blur the lines between media and technology. And watch as you make wealth grow. Go. Build partnerships with the very best. And grow your voice, because the world needs India's perspective more than ever. Go into India's heartland. Speak her languages. Tell her stories. Grow her ambitions. Go. Make a difference. Create a platform for policymakers, trendsetters, and change makers. Because the only way to grow is to grow together. We are Network 18, and we are always on the go, enabling India to grow. Want to know what's the best way to grow? Let's go. Go farther. So far ahead that the competition can't spot you, let alone catch you. And grow your audience's insight. Because stocks may go up or down, but knowledge is invaluable. Go. Assemble the A-team, the ones who reach the top, and then keep going. Go into uncharted territories. Blur the lines between media and technology. And watch as you make wealth grow. Go. Build partnerships with the very best. And grow your voice, because the world needs India's perspective more than ever. Go into India's heartland. Speak her languages. Tell her stories. Grow her ambitions. Go. Make a difference. Create a platform for policymakers, trendsetters, and change makers. Because the only way to grow is to grow together. We are Network 18, and we are always on the go, enabling India to grow. Want to know what's the best way to grow? Let's go. Go farther. So far ahead that the competition can't spot you, let alone catch you. And grow your audience's insight. Because stocks may go up or down, but knowledge is invaluable. Go. Assemble the A-team, the ones who reach the top, and then keep going. Go into uncharted territories. Blur the lines between media and technology. And watch as you make wealth grow. Go. Build partnerships with the very best. And grow your voice, because the world needs India's perspective more than ever. Go into India's heartland. Speak her languages. Tell her stories. Grow her ambition.
Viewers, what an evening, and it's going to have some repercussions. We confront yet another Trump tantrum, a reckless outburst, laced with half-truths and strategic scapegoating. As his approval ratings nosedive and domestic pressures mount, Donald Trump, viewers, has once again reached to target India to rally his mega base. He's been doing it consistently. In fact, day 2 of his presidency, viewers, after initially on day 1 focusing on the border, he started talking about Tariff King India and other world economies, who he said were taking America for a ride, American citizens and consumers for a ride. Viewers, that Porsche for citing exaggerated claims of high tariffs and India's long-standing defense ties with Russia, Trump has announced a punitive 25% tariff with a so-called penalty starting August 1st. Viewers, Donald Trump has said this on Truth Social. And let me quote, "While India is our friend, we have done little business with them because their tariffs are far too high, among highest in the world. They have the most strenuous and obnoxious non-monetary trade barriers of any country. They've always bought a vast majority of military equipment from Russia and are Russia's largest buyer of energy, along with China. At a time, everyone wants Russia to stop the killing in Ukraine. India will be paying a tariff of 25% plus a penalty for the above. starting on August 1st. We have a massive trade deficit with India. August 1 deadline stands strong and will not be extended. A big day for America, unquote. Viewers, let's be clear. This isn't about fair trade or global peace. It's about political theater. And Trump is the maestro. India has stood firm in protecting its core economic sectors and sovereign decisions. In other words, Trump is triggered because his friend, his self-professed friend, Narendra Modi, hasn't surrendered. Viewers, Trump's domestic approval rating has hit a new low, forcing doubling down on his core agenda. An Ipsos poll puts it below 40%, viewers. It's the lowest ever for him. And one of the lowest at this point in a president's term in office. Modi's refusal to surrender economic sovereignty, rural livelihoods, and strategic autonomy is one of the triggers. India's refuse to open up the agri sector, especially to subsidize US dairy and poultry and pork. India's refused to reverse its push for data localization, requiring companies to store Indian users' data locally. India has maintained price caps on medical devices, namely stents and knee implants. It's all on screen, viewers, for you. All the hard facts. This is what has triggered Trump. India has refused to relax its FDI norms in the e-commerce platforms. India has resisted pressure to end defense and energy ties with Russia. In fact, Trump has mentioned that as one of the reasons for the additional 10% penalty. What's really got Trump's goat is that despite his attempt at blackmailing India by giving Pakistan a higher profile in recent days and asking India to snap all trade ties with Russia, Modi's resolve hasn't weakened. And that's the principal reason why Trump has hit India harder than some other Asian economies. Yes, viewers, Japan only 15%. Look at that screen. Indonesia 19%, Philippines 19%, Vietnam 20%, European Union 15%. Viewers, that is actually 35%, 25 plus the 10% penalty. And it makes us a little uncompetitive when exporting goods to America. Can a switch happen? Can these others outmode us? We were counting, viewers, on the 15% deal. That deal hasn't happened not because, viewers, India is being unreasonable. No, it's happened because Trump is being unreasonable. And Mr. Modi is going to have none of it. In fact, the government has issued a statement just a few moments back. And the government is sounding very, very resolute, viewers. It is making no bones about its disappointment, but it is also saying, and let me quote it, viewers, that India and US have been engaged in negotiations on concluding a fair, balanced, and mutually beneficial bilateral trade agreement over the last few months. We remain committed to that objective. But India, the government, will take all steps necessary to secure our national interest, as has been the case with trade agreements, including the latest comprehensive economic and trade agreement with the United Kingdom. The government attaches the utmost importance to protecting and promoting the welfare of our farmers, entrepreneurs, and MSMEs. Viewers, that's the red line which I've been talking about. And the Indian government doesn't seem to be softening here from this response. The Modi government hasn't broken a sweat, saying that it will continue negotiations with US to secure a deal at a lower level of tariff. 6 rounds of talks are slated at the end of August, and the markets too have factored in the impact largely. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of turbulence tomorrow, but it might just be very contained. The markets largely have anticipated this. Even globally, viewers, Trump has gone into a large number of trade agreements with other potential powers and countries, and I've shown you those numbers. And viewers, the Dow hasn't really flown off the handle. But the question is, will India lose out? The tariff announced 25% on all Indian imports. Of course, the threatened was 10% on BRIC nations, 50% on copper imports, 200% on pharma imports. That hasn't really transpired. The opposition Congress may be sniping at Modi by saying that all his Tariff for Trump didn't win Delhi reprieve on tariffs, but India has rightly stood firm in protecting its core economic sectors and sovereign decisions. India will not be dictated to, especially by a former president looking to revive his political fortunes in his second term in office through international strong arming. Let's unpack the motivations behind Trump's statement and why India must not blink in the face of bluster. Viewers, let me open this up. Most of the panelists tonight are very well-known commentators and figures. They really need no introduction, but I want to begin with you first, Suhail Seth. I know that you know Mr. Trump. You were at his inauguration. There are photographs splashed all over social media of your presence there. You seem to know him pretty well. Oh, well, at least you have interacted with him, seen him at close quarters. I don't want to put an exaggerated spin on anything. But Trump has used the word obnoxious in his post on Truth Social. This reveals a degree of pique. Now, Trump hates anyone, and you know this, who stands up to him. But here people say the Prime Minister is weak, surrendering to Trump, etc., etc. So he'll say, what's triggered Trump? Let's get the facts on the table.
So understand the man behind the motive. Trump has three major qualities. A, he's essentially a bully. And as you and I both know, bullies are cowards. They like pushing the envelope as far as they can. And then when there's a pushback, they kind of change. And you've seen that flip-flop happening, not only in this term, even in his first term. Number two, his other trait is he wants to always float balloons, oblique test the waters to see how far he can go. And then again, when there's a pushback, he will change. The third, he's an egotistical person who wants people to pander to him. The beauty is that Narendra Modi hasn't and didn't. Now, some dolts will tell you, oh, that Modi at one time praised him and they were friends. Look, the Prime Minister represents India. He represents Indian interests. He's not stupid to pick a fight with every global leader because some jokers in Parliament think it's important. I didn't say jokers in Parliament, but I meant people who make jokes in Parliament, lest I be sued. Number two, it's very important, Rahul, to understand that we have to protect sectors in India. Number one, the MSME. The MSME sector cannot be sacrificed because it's the bulwark of our economy. Number two, we cannot capitulate before a president who will perhaps exist for another 3 years. Because the other thing is he's trying to even rig the Constitution of the United States and get a third term, which we don't know if it'll happen or not. The third is that I think Narendra Modi played his cards right. You know, yesterday I heard Mr. Gandhi's speech, and I mean Rahul, not Mahatma, where he said, oh, but you know, why did Trump's name not be taken? There is something known as realpolitik, and there is something known as debating brownie points. In Parliament, you discuss politics. You don't score brownie points. I think what we have to do is the following. Number one, as you rightly said, I don't think this is going to have any impact on our markets. Number two, please understand the Indian economy. And you have many, well-known people on this panel, including an economist. India has a huge consumptive economy. That consumptive economy shielded us in the past and will continue to shield us from very strong headwinds. Will it shield us totally? Of course not. Number three, we have to remember that we are largely protective and should be of our agrarian economy. That's a very important factor because our rural economy, whenever there are headwinds on our rural economy, it has an impact on our overarching economy. The IMF has just said that the growth calculations that they have for India, the GDP growth figures are at about 6.4. Now, the economist here, Amir, is best suited to respond on what that 6.4 will translate. Because if my economics serves me right, every percentage point of increase in GDP helps alleviate poverty of about 1 to 5 million people. That's the normal benchmark. I don't know if it has changed now, but that's largely the pitch. Plus, remember, we also have to start making deals. But the big lies, Rahul, which no one is talking about is that the Congress's entire bullshit, pardon my French, but I didn't use the F word, the entire bullshit about, oh, Trump, you all must have done. The fact is that if we had adhered to a ceasefire based on a threat from Donald J. Trump, then how come this tariff plus penalty has been imposed on India? So it obviously proves that A, there was no phone call, B, there was no pressure, and C, there was no quid pro quo that if you want a great trade deal, do the ceasefire.
Yeah.
It's a typical case of operation successful, patient dead, qua Donald J. Trump.
Well, the second part, let's for the moment just park aside. I'll come to that. But let's still focus on the economics and the impact on India. Now, I have with me the founder of GTRI, Ajay Srivastava, noted expert in this particular area. And Mr. Srivastava, what will be the impact? We have a trade surplus of about $48 billion, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in that region with the United States.
Yes, Rahul.
Yes. So will this be hit? Will this now dramatically sort of shrink and leave a massive hole in our economy? What's going to happen?
So, Rahul, what Mr. Trump said is half text only he shared. He says 25% tariffs plus penalty. He has not disclosed what amount of penalty will be taken on what sectors. I hope he announces this tomorrow or day after tomorrow, or maybe the executive order that may be issued tonight, he may disclose that. Till we know that penalty amount, we cannot hazard a guess on the impact.
Okay. But fundamentally speaking, 25% is more, 10% more than what we were perhaps hoping to have. I've seen some other countries, they've struck better deals. Obviously, their trade surplus, their equations were different, Mr. Srivastava. So let's look at the known. Let's look at the known and the impact of this known. What's it going to do?
So Rahul, yes. So I was looking at the deal other countries have struck with India, and whether are we in worse position than they? I don't find we're in the worst position. They got the deal, but the deal they sacrificed so much that they are going to repent and regret in the coming months. I'll share some details with you. For example, with Japan, Japan rice is a cultural thing. They never opened rice, but under the automobile lobby of Japan, they could open rice and other agriculture product. They agreed to invest $700 billion in US development, and they opened entire of their agriculture products and the manufactured goods. In return, what? US will be allowing them to export Japanese goods to US at 15% tariffs. So US goods will enter Japan at 0 tariffs, but Japanese goods will pay 15% tariff there. And in addition, Japan has to invest $700 billion.
Wow.
Europe, similar thing. Europe,
600.
My friends in Europe are there. They have been telling that, no, Europe will be negotiating the regular MFN tariffs, not these Trump tariffs. We are not going to have a deal. Deal will fall through. But somehow we are getting the picture that some lobbies again persuaded the bureaucrats. Europe is run by the bureaucrats, not by the politicians, unlike in our country. So they bargained, and the last moment they capitulated, and the deal again, similar to the Japanese deal, in fact, worse. Europe has been buying half of its oil from Russia. They say no more buying from Russia. We'll be buying everything from US. They also committed to invest more than $750 billion in US. And Trump says if you don't invest this much amount, then there will be penalties. And EU, again, they made most of their tariffs 0 for Trump. In return, when EU is exporting to US, Trump will be charging 15% tariffs. The fate of Vietnam and Indonesia is worse. Vietnam opened entire its agriculture and industrial goods. When its goods will be going to America, they will be paying 20% tariffs. Indonesian goods will be paying 19% tariffs. Rahul, and one more thing we all need to understand in India is that all these countries, they question, they say we have negotiated concessions of A level. What Mr. Trump announced, what he did is, after negotiators, they completed the deal, Trump spoke to the Prime Minister of, say, Indonesia or the Secretary General of Vietnam. He announced A++++. So there is a lot of discontent. And these countries are gradually coming out saying this is only a framework deal. This needs to be negotiated. Similar, Japan's cabinet secretary came out with a paper. They say we have not agreed to these many things. So everywhere that problem is there. So I think we, with no deal today, we may have a deal tomorrow. Who knows?
Yeah.
Today, I don't find when I compare with these people who got the deal, we are in no worse position than them.
Okay. Let's bring in Amirullah Khan, the economist also. Mr. Khan, clearly Trump is betting on the capacity of the US consumer and the US market to absorb the shock of this spike in tariffs on Indian goods. We've already seen retail inflation go up in some sectors in America. I was just there about 10 days ago, and it is quite dire. Food, for example, is much costlier than it was. Clothes, those costs have gone up. There is a pinch. Now, you can say that, the big, beautiful bill, etc., the cash, and you see the tax breaks will help US big business, etc., But, that's still something that's up in the air. But I want to ask you, can the US economy absorb this? Because in the first term, in Trump's first term, he did all of this. And it boomeranged badly. I mean, the steel lobby was on his case from day one. And he actually had to soften. So, I mean, he's taken on India. He's taken on, quote, the elephant in the room. Will the elephant trample him underfoot?
Thanks, Rahul. It's nobody's case when one argues about tariffs. High tariffs are bad economics. I mean, full stop. There is no question. There is no reason for any debate there. And these high tariffs are tariffs that the US customer will pay for. And as you rightly said, if you are in the US or if you see what's happening there, it is pretty chaotic already with rising prices and with exports from countries like India, Japan, Vietnam, all becoming more and more expensive. The US consumer is going to get affected, and somewhere it is going to show. The only problem here is that leaders like Trump are so gung-ho about their popularity and about their ability to deflect attention from the stupid economics that they are able to take these decisions which actually harm both the local economy and the customer. As far as India is concerned, how much are we going to get affected by? Our exports are very little. I mean, we export, generally very little. To the US, even less. So, yeah, there is going to be a few exporters, individual exporters, a few firms who are certainly going to get impacted in their exports.
So can you break this down for me, Amirullah Khan?
Yeah.
When you look at the exports, what is the pie? How much is it a percentage of our total exports to the United States? Who is going to get hit the most, if at all?
Oh, yeah.
Of course, a lot depends on whether America is going to re-leverage. I mean, right now we've seen that because of all these tariffs, etc., the consumer has taken a bit of the hit.
Yes.
The importers have taken a hit. They've absorbed the shocks. May have not passed it on to the consumer in most cases. But
Rahul, that's an important question. If you look at India's exports, we are exporting what? About 20% of our GDP to the entire world.
Yes.
Right? That's a very small amount. I mean, if you look at countries like China, etc., the percentages would be more in terms of 2/3 of the GDP. So the impact of tariffs, if Mr. Trump's idea is to punish India, the Indian economy is going to be at best marginal. Now, which are the sectors that are going to get affected? Our largest export to the US is technology, is software. But that's what? We are looking at $250 billion in total. The US would be about $150 billion, $150 billion for a 4 trillion economy is less than 2%. So as far as India is concerned, the impact of this penalty and this tariff rate is going to be marginal. Those firms, certainly the big firms, TCS and Infosys and Wipro, and those who export to the US, they are going to get impacted, and they are the ones who are going to make the loudest noise about this or complain about this. Apart from this, the MSME sector, for example, in India, very little export to the US. And therefore doesn't really matter. So the point that I want to make, one, is that tariffs are bad for the economy. The US announcing these tariffs is more grandstanding and making a political statement than anything else, punishing its own consumer more than punishing the country that it says it wants to punish. As far as we are concerned, we stand on slightly shaky ground here because we have very high tariffs. So when we impose tariffs, it becomes difficult for us to take a position saying our tariffs are fine. It is great to have Make in India, but we are not going to allow Make in America. So therefore, we are on slightly.
I mean, that's a
shaky
larger question of reform. That that's a policy direction that we're working towards it. We're opening up the economy, but it cannot happen at a pace dictated by Mr. Trump. Viewers, it cannot happen because someone else wants it to happen, and it certainly can't happen if Mr. Trump believes that he can call Munir to the White House and have paneer with him. That's not going to happen. That is not going to happen, viewers. If he's going to blackmail all of us, that's not going to happen. I want to bring in Smita Prakash because there are larger questions here. And I want to also bring in Dr. Sumansi Raman and wrap it up with Sohail Seth. Smita Prakash, the Indian government seems to be hardening its stand. I've read out the statement. I'm sure you've got it too from the government. How will this impact our ties? Because this is bad optics. Mr. Modi has been a steadfast ally. We know the chemistry they share. Mr. Modi is also not a pushover. Trump himself says he's a hard negotiator. He's a clever, savvy man who puts India first. These are Trump's words, not mine, not even Mr. Modi's. So I want to ask you, when you are, this is not some, Zelensky character that he's dealing with. This is Prime Minister Modi, a man who knows his onions. He would have built in a lot of contingencies already, because he knows the stance that he is taking and against exactly who he is taking. So how is this going to play out on the overall ties between the two countries?
Yeah, look, Rahul, there is what has happened now after this post and after what he's decided, there is a trust deficit and there is going to be friction between India and US in the coming weeks. Now, how these two sides handle this friction, whether it is through dialogue or through escalation, that will determine the tone and the depth of the future of India-US engagement. Now, obviously, if tomorrow you see hordes of people going and burning KFC and McDonald's like it used to happen in the 90s, that would be terrible. That would really mean escalation. And considering if you look at how Trump behaves, those kind of pictures, if they run on American television, it will be terrible. Now, that's the worst case scenario that I'm painting. Now, tariff tensions, they could get... it could impact in many ways, because if US thinks that India was in its corner as far as Asia Pacific is concerned, that is something that we could leverage. We could go through that route, but it doesn't make sense. Now, tariffs can also these kind of tariffs, if national sentiments rise in India and there's an anti-US rhetoric, how far will the government be impacted with that? Because a section of the media, a section of the Indian opposition, they will put pressure, and that could complicate the partnership even more. But here's an opportunity, right? The problem has always been that when India started this whole thing about Atmanirbhar, it was like, it wasn't a slogan, it was waving a red flag in front of countries who want to use India for their dumping ground. Right. Now, we are now in a position with the US where we can turn around and use this adversity as a challenge. We can bring in that big bag reforms that we need to end tax terrorism, bring about change in our judiciary, do what we needed. We can use this as a nudge, like we did when the Pokhran thing happened with us, when there was the nuclear apartheid against us, when big tech was not given to us. If we can use this as an opportunity for a whole host of things, if we have the gumption to do that.
Okay, Dr. Raman, Sohail Seth, and he's an astute observer of politics, he ended by saying that this really takes the bottom out of this Congress campaign. Surrender Narendra. Clear case of Modi putting India first. Trump is triggered. We are seeing the obvious effects of that. How do you respond?
Rahul, having started with Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar to where we are today, it's been quite a steep fall. Let's look at it objectively. As the learned economists on the panel said, yes, this move is not going to destroy the Indian economy. Indian economy is much too strong and resilient to be destroyed just by this kind of decision by one country, even though it's the US. But this is coming on the back of a lot of bad news already on the economy front. We are having software, particularly, the issue of software companies. The majority of their exports, almost 110, $115 billion of software exports go to the US. Software industry is already staring at a very difficult situation. You saw TCS laying off 12,000 people, announcing the layoff of 12,000 people. Now they're going to get hit. There is a perception issue also here, and it's not about MSMEs. We don't know the actual position on Indian pharma. Pharma is another big sector which could face a big impact because we don't know the details yet. We have to wait for the full details to be put out. My point is simple. In an economy that is already in trouble, and the point that Smita Prakash made, I don't know why we need Trump to levy tariffs to end tax terrorism in this country. That literally blows my mind. Why would you need tariffs levied by America
saying that
to end tax terrorism? What is the connection? Why should we not do it without the US
that's
tariffs?
fine. That's fine. She's being rhetorical.
Why have we not done it in 11 years?
Suhail
Why have we not
can you
done
please
it
explain
in
to
11
him?
years?
If I can hazard a guess.
Why has it not been done in 11 years? Why have tariffs not been
if
lowered?
I can hazard a guess.
Tariffs are 110%.
Okay, if I can hazard a guess on your rather very astute intellectual point, I think the point that is being made is, let's imagine an economy spirals into trouble. The domestic government, which in this case is the Indian government, will find a way to incentivize local industry. It's been done all over the world. This is not rocket science. If that happens, one of the elements that will be rationalized will be taxation, again, which happens. So I don't see why you are getting into a fit over tax terrorism. The issue is, will domestic industry be incentivized by the government? I think it's a cul-de-sac. They have to incentivize it, because otherwise you will kill domestic consumption and domestic industry. That's point number one. Point number two, it's no one's argument that the economy is all hunky-dory, but the global economy is going through pangs. Look at what's happening in Europe. Look at what's happening in Germany. So we have to recognize that, as the economist very rightly said, we are still not buffeted by those strong headwinds because of a huge consumptive economy and a very low volume of export. So that's where our cushion lies. But as you know, Sumant, no one knows what the future is going to be. Hopefully, we'll still be around and still on television.
No, I'm sure. I hope there'll be better things to do than just being on television. But the fact of the matter is, viewers, and this is something that is fundamental tonight. Viewers had, and I want to bring back Ajay Srivastava because he knows the minutiae, he knows the numbers, you see. Now, what is Trump's expectation from Modi? Where does he want the concession that is going to make him go back to his base and say, look, I got you a big and beautiful deal with India? What's going to slake that immediate ambition that Trump harbors?
Rahul, he defined 4 of his expectations, which have not been met, and that's why he's not happy. First, he says no tariffs, which means you cut tariffs on agriculture products also. 95% of US exports to India are industrial goods, and we are prepared to cut tariffs on all of those. So trade deficit problem can be sorted out by India. India's offer will include that.
So you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, that on 95% of the imports, which are actually industrial goods, we're saying it's okay. We won't tariff. We won't put any tariffs. But leave the 5% or 3%, which is agricultural goods, out of it. And that's the problem, is it? Trump is really being unrealistic, isn't he?
Not only this. Rahul, shall I continue?
Yes, please.
Second, he says non-tariff barriers. What does he mean by non-tariff barriers? India does not allow the import of, say, butter, which is coming out of the milk of a cow, which has been fed the meat of another cow. It's abhorrent for us. We can't tolerate this. He says, no, this is Indian objection is unscientific. Throw it away. Then he says, in this tweet, he mentioned why we are buying so much oil from Russia. Why we are buying so much military equipment from Russia. So his grouse is not only trade. He wants to capture us all along in geopolitics, economics, everything. So you cannot meet his demands.
You cannot meet his demands.
Some of this as a negotiating position. One quick point, Rahul. The pressure is on the Indian government because multiple other governments have already signed the trade deals, right or wrong.
Yeah, but Mr. Srivastava has told you that those are going to hurt those economies. You want us? Listen, we are Indian first.
Stupid.
Look,
We are Indians
that
first.
is something. That is something which
No,
only
just
history
because
will
others
tell
have
us
signed,
how
we
much
should
they're going to
sign.
be hurt.
I mean, that is a ridiculous argument.
Suman's
EU,
point is
EU has
that
signed,
we must submit
EU has
ourselves.
signed, Japan has signed, Indonesia has
But
signed.
sir, the terms matter
UK has
more
signed.
than the action.
No, I agree. But
Then what do you? Then what is the problem?
Rahul,
Yeah.
No, 1 minute.
if we were to go
Say
by,
that all
if we were to
these
go by
countries are
Suman's,
signing, are surrendering, and we are the only ones holding out. I think
Isn't
we
that
have
good?
to do some
I mean,
introspection.
why are we holding out? Because,
If
sir,
our
the
economy
Indian,
is going to
don't
fail,
the Indian farmer is more important than some Dallas, Texan, Kansas farmer.
If the
Come on.
if the economy
Rahul,
is going to take
Wow,
the
man.
hit, then questions will be
What
asked.
sort of absurd
Questions will
logic
be
is
asked.
this?
no. I'll tell you what his logic
It is not absurd logic.
His logic
It is
is
not
that
absurd
India
logic at
must
all.
surrender
To
itself
say
to
that every
stupidity.
other country is signing deals to hurt themselves makes no sense.
What do you
does
mean?
make
Makes no
sense.
sense. He's given you the numbers.
He's given
Sir,
you the
do you know
numbers.
what happened with do you know what happened with the Chinese-sponsored RCEP? Do you know what has happened to those economies? Go and find out what's happened to Thailand and company. We kept out of RCEP, and people like you were saying, "Oh, this is the beginning of insularity, and India is looking inwards, and this is, the explosion."
This is actually the Congress
Come on,
perspective.
1 second.
This is
Jesus.
the Congress
1 second.
perspective.
Congress
The
perspective.
Congress
No, it
perspective
is
is
not.
be a rat
This is my
and follow a Pied Piper.
Oh my God.
Be a rat and follow a Pied Piper.
I mean,
That's
I
the-
cannot
we are-
believe,
we
Dr.
are
Raman, that you are saying
we are
sign a
smarter
deal
than
because
all
someone
the
else has
countries in the
signed the
world.
deal.
Good
I mean,
luck.
ridiculous
Okay, so
here.
just 1 second.
We are-
Okay,
We are
let's
the
see.
smartest. We are the smartest. We are the only ones who think about the benefit to our country. All other countries want ruinous deals which will destroy their economies, and that's why
Maybe.
they go and sign up.
Maybe.
Wow, good luck to you. Good luck to you. That's the approach. Good
So
luck.
basically, Sumant C. Raman wants us to express our intelligence by either agreeing to a bad deal or express our stupidity by not agreeing to this deal. There are only
No.
two alternatives.
All
here.
these
There is
countries
no
have
third option.
negotiated. All these
Because he
countries
believes that we cannot be as stupid as the others, and
All
we
the
must
countries
be
have
I'll tell you what the problem is. I'll tell you what the problem is. The problem is that surrender Narendra. No, 1 second. This surrender Narendra narrative is collapsing.
only
That's the
smart one in
problem.
the
And
world.
this
All the others
opposition
are
now doesn't know what to say. So they say, "Karlo ji deal, do the deal
No, they
at
are
any
saying-
cost."
They are saying, "अगर औरों ने
everyone
किए,
else in the
आप
world
क्यों नहीं
is
करते?"
आप क्यों नहीं करते?
And if you do it,
We are
they will
the
say you've again
only-
surrendered.
You again
So
said,
protect
there
both
is
the
no.
other.
Okay, anyhow.
We are
telling you,
Okay,
we are
let's
the
pipe
believers
down.
in partial
All
pregnancy.
the others are stupid. That's the argument.
Okay, all other
others are
countries.
stupid. We are
Sir,
the only smart ones.
Sir, it can be
Okay,
possible.
good luck.
Why are you doubting us? We're the only large growing economy, isn't it? The leading growing economy, in the world. The fastest growing.
I'd much rather be stupid than be suicidal.
Yeah, well,
Let's understand where the economy is headed. I may be stupid in the eyes of Sumant C. Raman and 20 other economists, not including our friend here, but we also have to understand that the government of India and its prime minister has to worry about India. He doesn't have to worry about an opinion that will be written on some silly op-ed in some newspaper which no one will read.
Well, the New York Times has already put out some sort of a very extremely tenuous, sententious commentary, actually. Viewers, look, let's just move on because there is another important story that we really must get our heads around. And this has brewed in Parliament all of yesterday and has spilled over to today. Viewers, when foreign policy becomes a theatrical prop, who really benefits and who pays the price? Fundamental question. I wrote a piece today, viewers, which you can read. I've put it out on Twitter. Please go through it. It's an elaboration on the point I'm going to make. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi has yet again mounted the moral high horse, but this time with a megaphone aimed at India's Prime Minister speaking in the Lok Sabha. He threw down the gauntlet. And he has said, viewers, and let me quote him before I play out his soundbite. He has said, in no uncertain terms, that if Modi ji has even 50% of the courage that Indira Gandhi had, then clearly he must say in Parliament, Donald Trump is lying. Trump, you're a liar. You did not make a ceasefire, unquote. Listen in, viewers.
If he has the courage of a Indira Gandhi, let him say here, let him say here that Donald Trump, you're a liar. That you did not make us ceasefire and that we did not lose any planes. Let him say it here. If he has the courage. 50% भी है इंदिरा गांधी का, तो यहाँ बोल दे.
Viewers, that dare or taunt or that urging of the Prime Minister capricens a shrill campaign launched by the Congress aimed at providing Modi some sort of gateway to redemption in the public sphere as if he needed one. For the past few weeks, the principal opposition party has sought to establish that Modi surrendered India's strategic autonomy, that he did so by agreeing to a Donald Trump-dictated ceasefire just as India's armed forces had gained the upper hand over Pakistan's military during Operation Sindoor. Nevertheless, to call upon Prime Minister